Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud. Today we're going to be talking about a series of Grand Water Trines. We're going to be doing a deep dive into this beautiful trigon aspect between multiple planets and giving you some timing, giving you some insights through the language of the decans. We're going to just spend some time together, answer all of your questions, and hopefully have a wonderful afternoon. So if you are joining us here today, please let me know you're here in the chat. It's always nice to see friends stopping by on these beautiful Venusian days. Stella Rendition is here. What's up, friends? Says aloha, Spencer. Happy Venus Day. Happy Venus Day to you too, my friend. Hope you're doing well. I love the little green heart there. I've got my green shirt on. It's a shirt that says, "The world is a better place with you in it." And that's true. I believe that for each and every one of you. Rachel Fletcher is here. What's up? Rachel says hello from Roanoke, Virginia. Hope you are doing well over there, my friend, and that this beautiful fall day is treating you well. All right, friends, a couple announcements here. Ani's getting in under the wire, says, hello, packing and barbecuing today. I'm moving. Jupiter on my IC is going well. Oh, good. Ani, nice to see you here. April, hope everything's going well your way. And maybe we'll help give you some insight into your move with Jupiter and Cancer. We're going to talk about Jupiter and Cancer today. We're going to talk about Mercury and Mars and Scorpio and Saturn and Neptune and Pisces. So maybe we'll give you some insight into that move. Stella says, love the shirt. It's a great shirt. I found this at a thrift store. I like the message. I like putting those positive messages out there because the world is a better place with us in it. You know, I mean, sometimes maybe we have our doubts, but I think that getting that positive reinforcement and feedback is a good thing. Leanne is here. Hello, Leanne. Nice to see you. Saying hello from the UK. Hope you're doing well, my friend. This is a new face I haven't seen in the chat yet, so thank you for hanging out with us here today. All right, friends. I've got a few announcements before we dive into our Grand Water Trines. Of course, we're talking Grand Water Trines today. But you can find me over at spencermichaud.com. I do readings over there. I do classes. I have transit readings. I have natal readings. You can click on the Book Now button if you want to get some greater insight as to what these transits might mean for you and for your natal story, how these transits might be affecting you in the greater narrative of your life, or what's coming up in the next couple months ahead. I also do astrological tutoring, and I have an extensive webinar store if you're trying to learn astrology through the language of the decans, through tarot, through mythology and fixed stars. I have all sorts of different webinars available there. I have a whole series on the decans that I'll talk about today, which are a 10-degree section of the zodiac that are associated with tarot cards. I'm going to show you some tarot cards today as well. I've got some astrological magic webinars that I did with my beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews of Third Coast Mojo. We broke down the 7 traditional planets and how to create a magical practice and a devotional practice with those planets, how to elect different cool planetary elections and astrological magic. I have some teaching material about the tarot and how it relates to astrology. I hope that you go over and support the work that I do over here through the magic of education. Okay, speaking of my beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews, Third Coast Mojo has all of your magical needs. She is featuring a Venus in Libra election called Serene Queen this month. We have Venus in Libra right now, which is a great position for Venus for creating win-win situations. And Serene Queen is a special formulation that I believe was elected on the fixed star Spica at 23 degrees of Libra, which is an extra beneficial fixed star. And Serene Queen has all sorts of elements within it that are designed to calm your nervous system down, right? Like chamomile and lavender and things of that nature. I wear this almost every day because I tend to be a little bit high strung sometimes, and this helps me to stay centered, to stay focused, to stay balanced. You can check her out over there and support her work on Etsy at Third Coast Mojo. I also have a beautiful newsletter that you can sign up for if you want to know when I'm going live or when I'm releasing new products or classes, when Third Coast Mojo is releasing new products. Sign up for that, and you'll stay up to date on everything that we do here at Spencer Michaud Astrology. And then finally, if you want to support the work that I'm doing here today, you can purchase a super chat while I'm live on YouTube, or you can go to buymeacoffee.com and become a patron over there. Your support is extremely appreciated. It helps me keep the lights on. It helps me keep doing this work, helps pay for all of the software that goes into doing this work. There's a lot of subscription services for all the graphics and all of these things, the website hosting, digital store hosting, all of those things cost money, and your support is extremely appreciated. All right, friends, announcements are done. Checking back in with the chat here. We got some people stopping in again here. Let's see. Cosmic Passports is here. Nice to see you, friend. Love the way you combine Decans Tarot and astrology. Hi, Spencer. Nice to see you, Cosmic Passports. I appreciate the kind words, friend. I do my best. I try to unify all of these different systems in a way that is focused, in a way that is simple to understand, and one that's practical and help you so that you can go about your daily life and apply these astrological and tarot themes, decanic themes, and make our lives better, really, because if we're studying astrology just to make ourselves scared all the time, what good is that doing, right? How can we make our lives better through this knowledge and through acceptance of some of the things we have to go through, and being able to change not only our perspectives, but our actions out in the world? K-Wow is here. What's up, K-Wow? Says, good afternoon from North Carolina. Happy to be here for a bit this afternoon, leaving in an hour for a camping trip. Oh, man, you're going to see some beautiful fall colors, I hope, over there on your camping trip. That sounds like a lot of fun, friend. Enjoy connecting with nature. Ani says, I've been using Tanya's Jupiter in Pisces while burning a lot of sage during the sale. Oh, nice. Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. That's a great election. The Jupiter and Pisces oils are wonderful. Says, I've been of my home in the sale of my home and it's not hurting. Love the Jupiter oil. Okay, so you're using it to help facilitate the sale of your home. I love it. An excellent use for that, for wishes coming true, right? Jupiter and Pisces. We'll talk about that a little bit today, about putting our intentions out into the world and trying to think about how that might manifest and how we can try to draw things to us that are important to us. And Jupiter can be a wonderful assistant in that regard. All right, friends, we're talking Grand Water Trines today. So there are a lot of moving pieces with this. Some big picture thoughts. First of all, what is a trine? If you're new to astrology, well, trine is a flowing aspect where we have planets that are visiting a common element. In this case, the water element. And they are 120 degrees apart. And it's based off of shapes, right? So a trine, when we look at a trine in the chart, it looks like a giant triangle. So let's bring a chart up here and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so let me pull up the chart. One moment. And I will demonstrate this. Okay, so here we have a trine chart, right? So a chart that we can demonstrate our trines. So let's use blue today because I think blue gives us this really nice kind of, this nice quality here. There we go. So here is a trine aspect, right? And of course, it looks like a triangle. Ancient Greek astrologers, philosophers called this a trigon aspect. And in Demetra George's excellent book, Astrology in Theory, Ancient Astrology in Theory and Practice, Volume 1, she talks about the different qualities of the different aspects. The aspects were sort of like these planets witnessing each other through a visual ray. So in this case, this is a positive flowing aspect. She says the conjunction unites and relates to the number 1, a symbol of unity. The opposition, which is divisive, relates to the number 2 and is a symbol of duality. The trine, which is harmonious, relates to the number 3, a symbol of synthesis. Remember that word, synthesis, because we're going to be talking about how to synthesize all of these different planets and what they represent and the decans that they're moving through over the course of our talk today. The square, which is challenging, relates to the number 4, a symbol of conflict, and the sextile, which is mildly easy, relates to the number 6, a symbol of harmony. That's on page 401 of Ancient Astrology in Theory and Practice. I highly recommend both volumes of that series if you want to learn Hellenistic astrology. But we've got these flowing aspects between planets. This would generally suggest ease, right? Suggest the door being open, the wheels being greased, whereas squares are a little bit challenging, right? Where squares are friction and conflict of interest. here these planets are attempting to work together. Now, that doesn't mean that things are going to be perfect. It means that there still might be some challenges that we're going through, but there is a sort of harmonization between them and an opportunity, really, to work on multiple areas of our life and have them cooperate with one another to change our circumstances, I think, or to change our perspective. I think a change in perspective can facilitate a change in circumstances. So all of those things, I think, are flowing into one another. So we are looking at the trine aspect. And what we're going to be dealing with here is Mercury and Mars in Scorpio 3. So here's one element of this Grand Water Trine. Here's Mercury and Mars in the third 10-degree section of Scorpio. We have Saturn retrograde and Neptune retrograde that are going to be moving through the third decan of Pisces in this chart, which is basically a chart of the new moon in Libra that's coming up, which is a starting point, a jumping off point for this. Neptune isn't quite into Pisces yet, but it will be shortly afterwards. And then we also are going to be discussing Jupiter in Cancer 3 today, the third decan of Cancer, Jupiter and its exaltation. So all these planets are making these really interesting contacts with one another. Think about all of these planets in a cosmic courtroom, and they're giving witness and testimony on the fate of our lives as human beings on this planet. Like, these are the gods in the cosmic courtroom making, I wouldn't say they're necessarily making arguments with each other. They're actually probably having agreements about how our fate are going to unfold. And that's nice, because sometimes when the gods disagree about how our fates unfold, that can lead to some challenges and some really difficult experiences that we have, right? But here, those are going to be flowing aspects between one another. So those are our three kind of things that we're going to be experiencing and talking about today. Now, just a couple big picture thoughts about this before we dive into the details. This is a formation that is going to be repeating multiple times. So there's sort of been a cosmic order that we've been experiencing with these Grand Water Trines. We have been experiencing Mercury moving into a new sign, like Mercury transiting from Libra into Scorpio. Shortly afterward, we were seeing Mars following along. Mercury moves the fastest, although Mercury is going to be slowing down because it's going to be stationing retrograde during this period. And then we had the Sun moving through, and then Venus moving through. So this succession of planets moving along into the zodiac and creating this Grand Water Trine with Saturn and Jupiter in particular, but also Neptune as we move further into it. Now, an interesting phenomenon is going to happen over the course of the next month or so is we're going to see Mercury stationing retrograde and then direct. We're going to be seeing Saturn stationing direct, and we're going to be seeing Jupiter stationing retrograde. So many of the things that we talk about today, we're going to be revisiting multiple times. So giving us the opportunity to really dive into these decanic themes in particular, I think is going to be very important, because we're going to be going over this territory quite a bit from many different planetary alignments. Okay, and I will give you the dates for all of those. So that's sort of a big picture thought that I have here, is that this is going to be affecting multiple parts of our lives. Multiple planets are involved. They are flowing aspects between one another. They are of the water element, so there may be an emotional component to all of this. There may be a projection of our dreams, of our hopes, of our desires. Okay, think about those words: desire in association with Scorpio, dreams in association with Pisces. Okay, and then thinking about how do we achieve this with abundance, I guess maybe with Cancer 3. How do we achieve this abundance in a way that is not necessarily doing harm or taking away abundance from somebody else or creating scarcity for somebody else? So we're going to be dealing with potentially composting Scorpio and our illusions about what we're holding on to, about what we need to let go of. We might be bound to make some sacrifices for our dreams. with Saturn in Pisces. And we may be trying to smooth this process out in a way that does no harm with Jupiter and Cancer. So those are big picture thoughts. Let's go into the details here. Okay, I'm just checking in with our chat here. Steven's here. What's up, Steven? Says happy Friday. Stopping by to say hello. We'll be listening in the background while working. Nice to see you, Steven. Hope everything's going well. Javiera, I think this is Javiera. It says everyone's changed their screen names today. It's interesting. What's up, Javiera? I think that's you, my friend. Javier's grumpy today. Oh no. Well, hopefully we'll lighten your spirit. Corinne is here. What's going on, Corinne? Nice to see you. Hope everything's going well your way. And Marsha Lindsay is here. Nice to see you. Says hi, Spencer, from Mantua Creek, New Jersey. Thinking of flow and abundance and letting go of low vibrations. Well, it's nice to see you here, friend. Hopefully we'll be able to lift the vibration here for you. Yeah, okay. Okay, so let's start breaking this down. And I wanted to start by showing you, okay, I want to show you each of the individual decans and talk about which planets are moving through those decans. We're going to start with Scorpio 3, okay? And here we have a decan flashcard for Scorpio 3 and the tarot card that is associated with this. Now, another thing I'm going to do today is I have a friend. Her name is Nicola. Nice to see you, Nicola, if you're listening. Nicola Allen. And she has this wonderful tarot deck. It's called the Wild Way Oracle deck. And it is Decanic based. And it has these beautiful paintings that she's done. She's from Scotland. And she has these beautiful paintings of animals that are native to Scotland. And each of them represents a different decan. So we'll talk about those today too. Super cool. Check her out. Might have her on the show at some point to talk about her artistic process. But let's begin with talking about Scorpio 3. We have in our Decanic Rider-Waite Tarot, we have the Seven of Cups. In Nicola's deck, she has the Cormorant, which talks about transformation and potentially diving deep for little fish. They're seabirds that are hunters of the sea. And she talks about the illusion of where a fish might be underneath the water when we're hunting, like with a school of fish. And sometimes, you know, if you've ever been close to a large body of water, you can see things underneath the surface of the water, but when you reach in, they're not exactly where you thought they were. It's a little bit of an illusion. It's a little bit of a, you know, kind of a moving target on some level. And I think with this decan, which Book T calls the Lord of Illusionary Success, the Book of Thoth calls it the Lord of Debauchery, we see a figure who is trying to choose between all of these pleasures, right? And we are trying to, I don't know, understand what is real and what is not. We have two Decanic rulers in this. Venus is the descending Chaldean ruler. The moon is the triplicity lord. And while I'm here, I got another question this week from another listener named Michael. Sorry I didn't get back to you in your email, Michael. But I wanted to read to you just a little excerpt from 36 Faces, beautiful book by Austin Coppock, because Michael's question was, what is the difference between the Chaldean ruler and the secondary ruler here? And Austin has a good explanation of the secondary ruler in particular. The first ruler is in descending Chaldean order, and that comes from the Hellenistic tradition. And this is where we have Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, the Sun, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon in descending order, and it cycles around. Starts with Mars in Aries 1, and then cycles around, and it ends with Mars actually in Pisces 3. So in this case, Venus is that ruler. Now, with the secondary ruler, this comes from an Indian tradition, and I will quote on page 29. He says, in addition to circling upon a different wheel, the Dracanas, which I believe Dracanas is the name for the decans in this particular system, also partook of a different system of planetary rulership. While the Hellenistic astrologers had primarily used descending Ptolemaic order to determine which planets were to rule each signs, the Vedic astrologers use a different method entirely, known as the Parasara Dreskana. This system of decanic planetary rulership followed the logic of the signs and the elements. The first decan of a sign was given to the was given the ruler of the sign itself. So like in Scorpio, we have the first decan associated with Mars, the ruler of Scorpio, okay? The second decan was given the ruler of the next sign in zodiacal order of the same element. So Scorpio 2, if we go in order, it's going to be the secondary ruler is going to be Jupiter, because Jupiter is the ruler of Pisces. So we go Scorpio, Pisces. And then here we have Scorpio 3, the third decan, which is given the planetary ruler of the last sign of the same element. So here is the Cancer ruler, the moon, in the third decan of Scorpio, because it's the third sign away from where we started, it of the same element, if that makes sense. Okay. So I think this is important because that's kind of a cheat code to understand, okay, if I'm starting in a particular sign, I'm going to start with the ruler of that sign, and then I'm going to move in zodiacal order to the ruler of the same element sign. Okay. So I hope that answers your question, Michael. And thank you so much for reaching out and for your support of the channel, friend. Okay. So Mercury and Mars in Scorpio 3. Here we have, in descending Chaldean order, Venus. In the triplicity method that I just described from the Dracanas, it's the moon. So if we think about both rulers, Venus glamorizes, trying to harmonize, bring things together. The moon has this kind of intuitive quality. Sometimes it's a hidden quality. Sometimes it's a collector of light. I think with this particular decan, we have to remember that we're in a Mars ruled sign. And Mars's function is to sever and to separate. And in this case, Mars is severing and separating from the spirit that animates a body from a spent body, okay? From a body that is no longer able to contain the essence that animates it in a way that is healthy, okay? We all witness this when we go through the seasons. We have, if you're a gardener, you plant a seed, it grows into its full fruition, it fruits, and then it starts to decay. If we try to keep the decaying plant alive, what it produces is going to be, it's not going to be full of any nutrition. It's going to be full of rot. It's going to be full of just, it's a shell of itself. And if we were to allow that form to decay fully, it would actually provide the sustenance and the nutrients for the next cycle, for the next plant in the series. Like from the baby seed that it's consolidating into is going to be fed by the old form that gave birth to it, which I think is really fascinating. So Mercury and Mars are going to be moving through Scorpio 3. There's a spirit in this decan called Kairos, which is the opportune moment. And Kairos is a deity in Greek mythology that is a little cherub with a lock of hair on his forehead that can be grabbed from the front. So think about when we're dealing with Scorpio 3, we have already gone through identifying a desire that may be unhealthy for us or a form that we need to let go of. We have maybe revisited that form in Scorpio 2 and maybe had these positive memories about it. We've distilled the essence out of it by revisiting temporarily, maybe through nostalgia, the pain of return. And then here, finally, in Scorpio 3, we have to understand that we really have to let go of this to liberate energy for the next cycle. The challenge here is that Scorpio tends to defend the dying life force. Scorpio Mars, like the Scorpion, is very strategic on how it is defending itself. It has one strike, and that strike is very deadly. And if we are trying to defend the form rather than the essence, we can get stuck, okay? So I think that what Mercury and Mars are attempting to do, and of course we're going to see the Sun and Venus moving through this later on in the cycle, but Mercury and Mars are going to start the cycle, okay? We are seeing a need to ask questions with Mercury. Mercury is a destabilizing, it casts sacred doubt on things. It says, what are other possibilities? What are our options? We need to ask questions about which forms in our life are giving us vitality, which ones we need to recycle so that the energy can be liberated to find a new form. Eventually, Mars will help us to sever from those old forms that we identify that are no longer serving us. The sun may illuminate some of these questions, and Venus may attempt to harmonize what remains, or maybe could help us, I guess, hinder us by helping us fall under the illusion that we can keep this alive. This is a decan where we're visiting. Austin Coppock talks a lot about sewers in this chapter. We're visiting some of the darker sides of life, the rot of our lives, the things that aren't sexy, the things that aren't necessarily beautiful, but need to be let go of, right? And it's very easy to come under the illusion of something that once held great beauty, that once held great attraction for our desires. And it's very easy to come under the seduction of that spell. And we have to be mature and disciplined enough to recognize if we continue to pursue something that at one point in our life may have been the right pursuit, but at this point in our life, it needs a new form. When we can recognize that, we can go through this process with grace rather than with trying to prop up some old form in a way that can lead to all sorts of evil being perpetuated. When you try to keep something alive that isn't supporting you, you're going to do all sorts of horrible things to keep it going. I'm thinking about I don't know. Think about, I've been using the example of serial killers that like in Psycho, where the Norman Bates is trying to keep the idealized image of his mother alive after it has long since lost its animating vitality. And he's doing worse and worse things because of that illusion. The same can be true in our life when we have, things that we don't want to deal with. If we have traumas in our life that we don't want to work through, that we don't want to go to therapy for, or that we don't want to release, if we're holding on to old grievances, sometimes what we will do is we will try to dull that pain through substance, through escapism. This is a decan where a lot of people I've worked with have realized that the habits and desires that they have aren't healthy for them. And they go through this important transformation process, just like we see in Nicola's card here, transformation, right? So they go through this death and rebirth of a desire, and they let go of a desire that's harmful, and they regenerate themselves through investing that energy into something that could be healthy for them. So that's one phase of this Grand Water Trine, and I think really important to understand. As Mercury initiates this, Mars will be the secondary trine, and then we have the Sun and Venus going through this same area of the zodiac towards the end of November. Okay, so I'll give you dates on all this, but we'll work it out for you. I'm just going to check in with the chat here. Javier says, I think this transit is what's making me grumpy. I'm feeling the Mercury shadow, and my devices are not working well. Oh no. That's tough for Geminis, right? When our devices aren't working. We'll get through it together, friend. Angela is here. Nice to see you. Angela says, hello, I made it. I'm very curious. I'm Scorpio rising at 26 degrees. Thank you, Spencer. Yeah, so with Angela here, with the Scorpio rising, right? This might be something that is a huge point of identification for Angela, like as far as trying to identify forms that need to be released. And if we're falling under any illusions about whether something is actually beneficial for us, or if we just need to let it go. So this might be a really important one for you, Angela. Okay, wow, says, good question and great answer. Thank you, friend. Amir says, it's dark over here. Yeah. We'll try to shine some light in the darkness, friend. And he says, Pet Cemetery, Stephen King is a good example of Scorpio 3. Exactly. Right? A lot of times we have these cherished pets that we want to live forever, but the form that's animating them the spirit that's animating them has already passed on. I experienced this a lot with my pets, right? Like we get attached, and I had to realize I had a cat that His name's Kitty Bear. And Kitty Bear had kidney disease. And there was an entire year where we were going through more and more painful exercises to keep her alive, right? I think that we had started to do like intravenous fluids and things like that. And I don't think it was fun for her, and I don't think it was fun for me. And eventually there should have been a point where I just said, you know what, we have to let go of each other and move forward. She eventually did pass naturally, but it was painful. And I think that we were both kind of suffering through it. And it was a tough lesson. But what I realized is that shortly after she passed, and the love that animated our relationship that's what was eternal. And I have two wonderful kitties now, Gandalf and Radagast, and the love that animated that relationship had found a new form. And that doesn't mean it replaced my previous pet. It doesn't mean that I didn't remember her. That she left an impression. She left a mark on the Akashic records, right? She left a memory that can never be removed. But it found a new form, and that form was vital and not one that I was trying to keep alive through more and more challenging means. So yeah, good example for sure. Okay. Yeah, I got to keep your sense of humor, Javier. Yeah. Okay, so let's move forward. Just keep all those themes in mind for Scorpio 3. Okay, here's a couple focus questions for those planets. All right. Themes of the beauty of decay, chasing old ghosts, debauchery, fantasy, illusion, releasing attachment, but liberation from addiction. So questions to ask of that part of the Grand Water Trine. Is this reality or is this illusion? What is real? Has the opportunity that's presented to me, is it past or is it still bringing me vitality? In this case, it's more likely that there's something that's past its prime. What forms are no longer vital in our lives? What dark truths do we need to accept that are painful but necessary? What desires do we have that need to be released and maybe find a new form? And then finally, how can you compost your past for your future fertility, right? These are the cycles of nature that we all have to come to terms with. Release is equally as important as growth. And it's something that we don't really spend a lot of time on in a capitalistic society that is obsessed with growth, that is obsessed with the growth of GDP, etc. We don't honor the times that we need to release. But as students of astrology, as students of this philosophical gift that we have to understand life and its natural cycles, we know that this is equally as important. And it will help us to stay in balance and help us to keep equilibrium in our lives and not get out of alignment. Okay. So the next part that we're going to go in zodiacal order. Let's talk about Saturn. Saturn retrograde in Pisces and Neptune retrograde in Pisces. And of course, that we are going to see some changing of positions. Saturn is going to station direct during this whole hullabaloo. Neptune's going to retrograde back into Pisces eventually. But this decan is syncretized with the Ten of Cups. And here you see a vision, like a rainbow vision, a vision of the happy ever after, right? We have two people holding hands with the little children beneath the rainbow, and it's this big glorious scene. And it really is an interesting decan because this scene is extremely idealistic, but the face rulers are somewhat challenging. The face rulers are Mars in the Chaldean order and Mars in the Triplicity system, a martial decan. So Pisces, being Jupiter ruled, we are trying to bring order. We're trying to bring peace. We're trying to expand out into our highest potential possibilities, etc. And really in Pisces, what we're trying to do is create a bridge between the idealism of Platonic form, I guess you could say, the idealized form of something, and the reality, the manifestation of it. Throughout the process, sometimes we are wandering lost in the first decan, trying to find our center once again, leaving behind material success in search of a higher meaning or purpose. In the second decan, we're bridging that gap between our creative imagination and what is possible in the physical realm. And then finally, in this third decan, we're asked to make a sacrifice. The Mars part about it is reflected in Austin's name of his chapter, A Cup of Blood, for this decan. Sometimes when we're trying to achieve something, we have to give something up. We sometimes become a martyr to a cause. We have to be careful about becoming a martyr to a cause. Now with Saturn here, Saturn is a binding agent. Saturn is a reality check. Saturn may be asking us, is this dream really realistic? And do we want to bind ourselves to a sacrifice? And is the sacrifice worthy of our energy and effort? Is the cause worthy of the sacrifice? Important questions to ask when we're going through this. Now, Neptune's going to complicate that because Neptune is the ultimate dissolver of reality. It is the perpetuator of illusion. And the combination of Saturn and Neptune is a strange marriage, because Saturn enjoys creating boundary and structure, and Neptune enjoys dissolving it. So we may have some confusing moments about our dreams, about what we're trying to achieve. We may have to get real about our dreams. We may have to, when we start combining this with Scorpio 3, we may have to release the illusion of a specific form, so that we can liberate energy to put it into the dreams that can be achieved, to the forms that can support the idealism. Okay, so that's part of this. There's a spirit in this decan, or a daimon, a guiding spirit called Elpis, because this decan is one that shows us wild swings of emotion. There's stories in this decan around Pandora and her jar, and all of the challenging emotions that are released from that jar onto humanity, all the challenging experiences, old age, death, war, famine, disease, etc. But Elpis was the hope that remained under the lid of the jar. So how do we maintain our hope even when Saturn is dampening that hope sometimes? I talked about this last week, about keeping the ember of hope alive while we're going through challenging experiences. Well, we may not be able to have a blazing flame of hope, and we may not be able to shine our light as powerfully as we would in more positive circumstances. But we have to keep that ember alive. We have to keep just enough oxygen on that so that we can protect that sacred flame, but not let it burn so brightly that it puts us in danger of being snuffed out by forces that don't support that energy. So Book T calls it the Lord of Satiety. The Book of Thoth calls it the Lord of Perfected Success. So we may be chasing an ideal. And again, Saturn says, is it really realistic? What can be achieved within this? What can be achieved within this sacrifice? And if you bind yourself to this sacrifice, you're going to have to see it through, right? This is an ephemeral decan. A rainbow is temporary. The illusion that we are under, the spell of idealism, sometimes we can wake up from that dream and we're stuck with empty-handed. Like, this is what's so dangerous about this, because as Saturn retrogrades through Pisces, we could fall victim to a dream or an illusion that when Saturn moves into Aries, the reality is that, man, we've bound ourselves into a tight spot where we really have to do a lot of hard work to maintain this dream. We may find ourselves without the support that we thought we might have for the dream. We may be bound to having to carry on the dream as an individual rather than as a group. And that can be very dangerous. So you have to be careful of what you commit to around this period of time. Let's check in with our chat here. What do you say? Javier says, this seems like a lot of work for me. Sarcasm helps too. We'll help you, friend. Ani says, is the sacrifice worth the dream? Need to let go of what is holding you back. Yeah, exactly. Is the sacrifice worth the dream? And yes, we have to release something to be able to achieve the dream. Ani says, the water trine is very clear. Absolutely. Javier says, this is too funny. I'm right in the middle of this trifecta. It's wet and cold. Sometimes it is. Sometimes we can feel saturated with this, right? It can be a lot to wade through this. It feels like we're screaming underwater sometimes. Steven says, clean water trines are the best instead of murky, muddy water. We'll talk about a planet that might muddy the water, Stephen. Uranus is going to be retrograding into back into Taurus, and that might muddy the waters a little bit. So we'll talk about that and how to work through those challenges. But yes, trying to get clear about our desires is very helpful. The esoteric butcher is here. I think this is Devin. I mean, everybody's screen name changed. Did they change something on YouTube today as far as screen name goes? That's probably what we're dealing with here. Devin says, imagine Saturn as a boat instead of a weight. Learn how Saturn can help you build something to carry you to Jupiter's buoyancy. I like that. Great imagery there, right? How do we build the structure of our dreams? What do we do to make the dream real? Saturn is a concretizer. It eliminates other possibilities to say, well, if you have this dream, you're going to have to let go of some other illusions that you have. Like let's say you want to have a family, like we have here in this beautiful card, the 10 of Cups. Well, you may have to sacrifice some imagined other pathways, some imagined other freedoms, because you are committing to the raising of the family. You're committing to settling down in that home with those children. You may have to give up some of the freedom of your youth and some of the imagined dreams. Now, that doesn't mean that you'll be unhappy. This is a fine line that I had to walk as a very young parent. I was a parent at about 23 years of age, and I was trying to keep the dream of being an artist and a musician alive while still being committed to being a parent that was there for my child as well. And it was hard. There were some times where one or the other, mostly the artistic vision, had to be sacrificed because I think that the raising of the child was more important in that moment. And that's sometimes true. Sometimes there are dreams that take priority over the other. And that doesn't mean they can't come back around. Like, as someone who's on the other side of raising an adult child, there's a lot more time to pursue other things once that cycle has been completed. So knowing the right timing is super important. But yes, knowing what is real and what isn't is a very Saturnian type of experience. Javier says, I'm being reborn again. I want to cry. It's hurty. Oh, Javier, we'll get you through it, friend. Rebirth is not always without its challenges and without its pain, right? Think of labor pains, right? Think of how painful that was. I think you're a parent, Javier, and maybe the pain that you experience, but the joy that comes afterwards, the liberation that comes afterwards. Javier says, oh, Saturn, we have a very close relationship. Yeah, lucky you, right? Ani says, Saturn is making the last retrograde pass in Pisces 3. For me, it's finishing a process that involves letting go of things that don't support the dream so it can become possible. Absolutely, right? All right. Okay. I'll make sure I do so. Javier says, I think Spencer, some setting went to showing the emails versus the screen name thing. Okay, gotcha. I'm just trying to keep it all straight here. I usually recognize people in the chat, but now everyone has a new name, right? Okay. Let's see. Ani says, for instance, Pisces in my 11th, playtime is over. Have to disassociate from the social networks that don't edify my endeavors if I want to level up. I think this is a theme, Ani, that we've been experiencing in a lot of different, I've been hearing about in a lot of different forums. The need to eliminate distractions, right? Sometimes social media can be wonderful for connecting us. Like, we're in a form of social media here, communicating with one another. But hopefully we're doing it in service of depth and connection rather than just distraction. And I think that I've been doing this a lot in my personal life recently too. I've cleared out a lot of clutter in my office recently this week so that I could have a clear space to think in. And as I was doing so, I was noticing all the abundance that I had of books and knowledge that I want to engage with. I'm a collector of books, a bibliophile, you may say. And I was thinking, I was like, you know what? I'm at the midpoint of my life, hopefully, if I get another however many years. But I really need to start committing and making the sacrifice to having this knowledge flow through me rather than just having them be ornaments on the shelf. So I've been really disengaging from social media, from some of those distractions, and and trying to pour that energy into reading. I've been reading a lot in the last few weeks, and it feels good. It feels uplifting. It feels like I'm not subjected to the twists and turns of all the machinations of I don't know, the news cycle, of the gaslighting, of whatever. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not paying attention and not trying to be helpful to those in need and paying attention to the real challenges and atrocities out there. It just means that I have to make that space to be in my own centered space first, so that when I choose is the key word, choose to engage with the outside world in that way, I do so from a place of love and centeredness. Now, on some level, that is an enormous privilege that I enjoy, and I want to acknowledge that as well. Not everybody has that privilege. They have to engage with this stuff all the time, face to face, and I'm sure that my time will come. But in the meantime, how do I prepare myself for that moment? How do I prepare myself to be able to make those choices that are serviced by a healthy center, by a grounded space, by knowledge rather than fear? All right. K-Wow says, same here. Me and my hubby were 20 and 21 when our child was born. It's tough when you're a young person and you're trying to figure out who you are, and you're trying to take care of another young person. But we all have our challenges. We all have our dharmas, right? Says Javier says, that's true, Spencer. I love being a mom, right? Yeah. Being a parent is definitely a blessing. It's one of the hardest things you'll ever do, and one of the most wonderful things you'll ever do. It is all of that wrapped up in one tiny little package, right? Javier says, books, I could live in a library. I feel like I do on some level. I'm very fortunate in that way. That is my wealth. Is I have been very fortunate to, if I wanted a book in the last few years, I just was able to go get it. And that's where I pour a lot of my resources into. I don't have a vehicle right now. We are a one-car family. We share a car. I don't buy a bunch of fancy clothes or go out to expensive meals very often, but I do give myself the gift of knowledge. That's what I really value, and that's what I pour my extra resources into. Okay. So if we continue on with showing Nicola's beautiful deck, we've got the Kingfisher associated with this deck. And the Kingfisher dives completely, entire headfirst, complete body into its into the ocean, into the river, to be able to achieve the goal of getting the fish that it desires. What happened here? There's all sorts of weird stuff happening here. Okay. One moment. I lost my little screen thing here for a second. So let's change this for a minute. And I'm going to hold on. I'm going to try to fix something here. Let's see. That's weird. It's not blurring the background anymore, but so it goes. Now you can see clear background and a clear face. Well, there we go. Maybe that's working. That's better. Okay, sorry about that. Now we have a little bit of a better viewpoint here. Okay, so let's keep going. What do you say? Yeah, weird stuff online, definitely. I think maybe it's the Mercury shadow kind of thing. Javier says, beautiful cards. Yeah, Nicola does some excellent work. She's an awesome artist. She has a Cancer midheaven, so I think that these images are really comforting, and the way she writes is very healing and protective. So I really highly recommend her work. So beautiful cards. So I'm showing you the Decans. Here's Scorpio. Here's Scorpio, sorry. The Cormorant, and then you've got Pisces, the Kingfisher. Then now let's talk about the Beaver here. Abundance, Cancer 3. And I'll bring this image to the screen here. And we'll talk about the third part of this trine. Okay. So here we have, that's weird. There we go. The Four of Cups. And in Nicola's system, she has the beaver building this dam, right? Okay. And the Four of Cups, third decan of Cancer is ruled by the moon in the descending Chaldean order, but also by Jupiter in the triplicity method. So we get the abundant quality of Jupiter in one of the planetary rulers. We get the lunar quality of having satiated the body, right? Satiated our hungers and desires, which I find kind of fascinating, because we have one decan that's talking about maybe having to let go of a desire, and another decan that's about fulfilling luxurious desires, right? So maybe we're softening the blow a little bit of what we have to let go of, because I think we have to let go of something to be able to enjoy the other things that we have, right? Maybe by letting go, it helps us to appreciate the abundance that we do have in our life by cleaning out the clutter, letting go of, like, I just had like the excess boxes, packaging. There was just piles of books that I wasn't going to read. Like, I had to clear shelf space. Like, I've collected so many books over the years that I've run out of shelf space, and I had just all these piles of books piling up. And there are a number of books that were from previous knowledge incarnations that I was like, I've moved beyond this. There are certain things that I would like to read now. And I boxed them up and I put them away, and maybe I'll give them away at some point. And it helped me to be able to access the abundance that I did have. And I think that interaction with Scorpio and Jupiter and Cancer is really important. By eliminating something that just is blocking manifestation through holding on to an old form, we actually allow ourselves to find appreciation for the abundance that we do have in our life. So this card in this decan is called the Lord of Luxury in the Book of Thoth, and the Lord of Blended Pleasure in Book T. Austin Coppock calls it the overflowing cup. You could see in the Four of Cups we have somebody who is refusing more on some level. He has his material needs met, and he's being offered this extra quarterly cup, I guess, the fourth cup from the hand of the divine, and he's got his arms folded. He's like, no, I've had enough. I'm full, right? So what happens when we have more than we need? The beaver, in this case, keeps collecting, right? He's dammed up the water. He's collecting all of this water. He's creating a lake instead of a river. Some may say that he's hoarding, right? He's hoarding the water. He's hoarding the sticks. And we have to be aware of that. When we have a malefic planet like Saturn, we have a leader in the United States who has a Saturn in this decan who is notorious for hoarding wealth. And that can be detrimental to those who don't have that type of wealth. Part of the themes of this decan is that when you accumulate wealth, there is an equal and opposite reaction of scarcity. When we have a benefic planet like Jupiter or Venus here, potentially we may be able to get our needs met and do so in a way that does not take away and create scarcity for someone else. The daimon in this decan, the spirit in this decan, is Hecate. And Hecate is a lunar deity that is both the giver of birth, the giver of life, but also it takes away. So many of the themes of this decan are philanthropy, of being able to share our excess, of being able to say, you know, I have enough. How can I share my resources with others? In Jupiter's case, how can I create the abundance that is inexhaustible in a way that doesn't take away from others? I loved rereading these chapters for this broadcast in Austin's book, 36 Faces, because there's new insights I gain all the time, because Austin's such an incredible writer, such a brilliant mind. And he talks about not only the resources that are material, like having enough food, having enough money, etc., but the eternal resources, having knowledge, having wisdom, having spirit that is inexhaustible. And I think what Jupiter is great at here is creating situations where we have an inexhaustible spirit, specifically, I think, of love that we can share with others, that by sharing it, it doesn't diminish us at all. We give love to people, it just creates more love. It's not a finite resource, whereas some of the physical resources may be more finite. When we hoard money, when we hoard food, sometimes that can take away from others. So how do we come in contact with the eternal resources that we have, the spiritual resources that are inexhaustible? And maybe we might be asking ourselves questions as to if we have an excess of finite resources. Do we really need all this? Do we really need to keep hoarding this? Do we really need to make someone else less than just so that we can alleviate our fears of change, our fears of being at a different point in the cycle of the Wheel of Fortune? I think those are important questions to ask. We talk a lot on this channel about capitalism. We talk about the challenges of that. And I think what we're seeing as a really difficult part of this cycle is because of the extractive nature of this philosophy. It's a philosophy. There comes a point of diminishing returns where, you know, all of the resources start to become consolidated within a smaller and smaller faction of people. And we start to see more suffering because it has been based on extraction and exploitation. Now, when we talk about other philosophies of economic arrangement, and we have things like, we talk about democratic socialism and things of that nature, we talk about ways that we can share so that we can keep the system working in a way that it does not necessarily diminish others. Now, this is, like I said, it's a philosophy. This is a belief system. We have to start. Jupiter is very, I think, associated with belief, associated with faith. To be able to make changes in our world that we want to see, it starts with belief. It's not necessarily just about changing every law, changing every system. It starts with a belief. If we have a belief, and I listened to an excellent podcast by a guy named Douglas Rushkoff. My partner sent me this. I believe it's called True Human. If that's, let me look this up. Douglas Rushkoff. Check him out. He's a really intelligent person. And yeah, Team Human is the podcast. He's a futurist. And he talked about intentional collapse and about the tech billionaires that are maybe accelerating intentional collapse because of fear, because they believe not in abundance, but they have an unchangeable belief in scarcity. They believe that they have to accumulate more and more resources to protect them from the inevitable collapse of society, of our world, of the arrangements and the laws that keep us working together in a state of order rather than a state of chaos. And his argument to that is that to be able to resist that type of thinking and forces, we have to think in almost the opposite way, that this is an abundant world, that there are inexhaustible ideals like love, like sharing, like kindness, where we can start to counteract this nihilism through our faith in this beautiful planet to provide for everyone, not for just a select few. Now, I know that there will always be some people that have more than others, and there will always be people that have less. But the extremes that we are seeing are almost unprecedented and very dangerous and accelerating the death of our viability on the planet. The planet itself, I believe, will survive. But will we survive on it is the question. And authors like Robin Wall Kimmerer of the book Braiding Sweetgrass, authors like Tyson Yunkaporta, who wrote the book Sand Talk, these are authors that are steeped in indigenous wisdom and indigenous traditions that do not believe in the limited resources of nature in so far as we have to hoard them and consolidate them. They believe in the ability of that mother, that system, to continually provide if we take care of it, if we are stewards of it rather than exploiters of it. And to me, this is the greatest message of Jupiter in Cancer 3. How can we become stewards of the inexhaustible systems in our life? How can we take care of the goose so that continues to produce golden eggs, right? How do we take care of our landscapes so that they continue to provide food, air, fresh water, etc.? How do we take care of our relationships in our life so that they continue to provide support and love? And we have to give what we want to receive. Douglas Rushkoff makes a lot of really interesting observations about there can still be rich people in the world, but do they want to live with people that are happy, right? Or do they want to live with people that are miserable? Do they want to sow the seed of their own undoing through the hoarding? And this is questions we have to ask ourselves on a much smaller scale. Do we want to sow the seeds of our own self-undoing by mimicking the Wendigo mindset, the hoarding mindset that we see displayed to us on a exponential scale with billionaires and almost trillionaires at this point? And are we going to accelerate the decline of our lives, our relationships by that hoarding? Or are we going to facilitate a healthy exchange of systems, a healthy exchange of love, resources, time, energy, effort with our neighbors, with our family, with our children, with our parents, with the strangers in our community that we share this earth with, that aren't really strangers, that are just part of this world in this beautiful moment in time that we were fortunate to share with one another? These are important questions to ask. And I happen to be of the belief that there is a different way than what we've been shown on the news, than what we've been shown through the example of corrupt leadership. And I believe it starts with you and your neighbor, with you and your family. It starts with the small actions that can snowball into a movement, that can snowball into a complete change of mindset. So I think one of the things that Jupiter in Cancer is going to help us with is faith. Faith in the ability of nature, faith in the ability of each other to be able to provide for one another, faith in the ability that when we share, it doesn't diminish us. It actually helps us to keep our systems healthy. So this part of it is an extraordinary boon for the Scorpio process of letting go, because it shows us that when we let go, it does not exhaust the inspiration, the vitality, the spirit that animates. It actually clears the way for new growth. It helps Saturn. It helps to soften the sacrifices that we make. It makes the sacrifices animated by wisdom. It makes those sacrifices animated by faith in the process. And you know what's really interesting here? Those sacrifices that Saturn are being asked to make in Pisces, they're being hosted by an exalted Jupiter, right? These sacrifices are in the name of creating win-win situations, of utilizing our excess to uplift others rather than to diminish others. So, man, just such powerful wisdom within this. Okay. Let me check in with the chat. We've got some beautiful comments coming in here. Amira says, yay, worms, my Venus in Cancer. I love this. I love this. Rachel says, in order to deal with the chaos of this year, I've been reading a lot too, especially fantasy, both literary and potentially trashy, but it has been helpful, a helpful escapism. Yeah, you know what? And no shame in that. I think that to be able to maintain our hope when we're being faced with difficult circumstances, we have to come into alignment with the things that we love. And sometimes the things that we love come through coming together with our imagination, with the things that make us feel good, because that good feeling can start in a creative visualization space, and that can extend out into our reality. If all we're taking in is fear, gaslighting, scarcity, there is nothing to draw upon with that. Nothing. It's empty calories. But if we're drawing upon things that inspire us, that give us hope, that give us faith, and we bring that into our realities, that's the substance that helps us to shape the reality that we want to see. And this is not necessarily just some woo-woo, create your own reality type of thing. This is how can we utilize the right mindset to take the actions out in the world that we have to draw upon. It starts with a thought, it starts with a vision, and then we can create from that space. If all you have in your mind is fear, if all you have in your mind is scarcity, you don't even understand what abundance looks like. You don't understand what love and faith and harmony between each other looks like. We have to draw upon these examples. So finding those examples, I think it's really positive. And Rachel's been part of our Lord of the Rings group, and we've really found a lot of solace in some of the heroic journeys of our hobbits, of our Numenorians, of our Gondorians, of our riders of the Rohirrim, of the Ents, of the wizards. They all have their different approaches and they all have their different motivations, but we see the spirit that keeps someone going in the face of great hardship and great challenge, and the love between them that gets them through it. And man, if we can model ourselves after a hobbit, I think there's hope for us yet, right? Yeah, I love this. The Horty Beaver here says, oh, hey, there we go. Charming Films. What's going on, friend? Hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing well over there, my friend. And lovely to see your face here on the live. Let's see. Javier says, yay, this one is hitting me too. That's why I woke up grumpy. They're doing nonstop work next door. A new store is going in, probably another yoga studio, which helps nobody in this community but the privileged. Maybe. Javier, I'm going through something similar with a little building behind my house that is potentially becoming a woodworking place that might have loud saws and stuff. But maybe it will help the community. We don't know. Maybe they have, maybe the yoga instructors have a program that helps underserved communities where they give scholarship programs for people who can't afford it. Maybe if they don't have that, you could go in and suggest that and say, you know what, this is a space that usually is only serving people who can afford it. What would you think about giving at least a couple scholarships to people that might not be able to afford your services? And then you become the initiator of that change. And then one thing that starts out as something that could make you grumpy, could make you upset, you have created the situation where it can become something that doesn't necessarily take away, but helps people to understand the nature of giving and receiving. Javier says, after I came here after being homeless after years, I just want a safe, peaceful place to raise my daughter. Javier says, no, they want to kick out all the poor people around them. Well, we have nowhere to go. Well, these are some of the challenges that we have, right? Maybe in that case, Javier, then the action that comes to you might be one of advocating with your local government. I know in my community, there have been open forums, especially for the place that's going in next door to me, where we can make public comments, and that's the best we can do in that situation, right? I made a public comment a few weeks ago about the place that was going in, but then I got to meet the owner of the space and we had a talk, and he, I think, allayed some of my concerns, and we had a good talk about what the future of that space was going to look like and how we can be good neighbors rather than be at odds with one another. And I think that's important in these times, is to not make assumptions about it and to start communicating. Contus9 says, what's your Mercury placement? You have such a soothing way of talking. Well, friend, it's Cancer 3. So Mercury in Cancer 3. Retrograde in the 12th house. Cancer moon. No, not Cancer moon. Taurus moon hosting that. So I think that part of it is the Taurus moon on the midheaven. I think having Mercury in Cancer is communicating in an emotional way that can be protective. I try to think about the impact of my words before I speak them. And I try to think about how what I'm going to say is going to land emotionally for people. As a Venus and Gemini native, I try to harmonize through communicating, and I hope it's helping. I really do enjoy doing this work and trying to create a situation of peace in people's lives. And I know that we all fall short of that glory sometimes, but I think we've done a good job of creating a good supportive container here for allowing ourselves to be that sort of revolutionary group that is rooted in kindness rather than in hate and fear. Ani says, Saturn says, let go of the dream killers, fear and distraction. Love it. Mars will help make it easier with the guidance of Jupiter. I agree, 100%. MCB8217 says, You guys, you have to tell me who you are in the chat. Sometimes I don't know um, who the screen names are today. So let me know if your screen name has changed. Tell me who you used to be, because I feel like I've seen this image before. So it sounds like Mercury in Libra. I have the part of Spirit in Libra, so that might be a motivating factor with that as well. Charming Film says it's yes. This is Carly. That's right, Carly Heath. It's been nonstop neighborhood animals that need to go to the vet since mid-September. I think during our reading I said it looks like major vet bills, and that's been it. Oh, I'm sorry, Carly. I'm sorry, friend. Oh, I know that's stressful, but hopefully you'll get through it onto the other side. And I think that's a worthy sacrifice, right, for your animal friends. Javier says, I love your optimism, Spencer. If you knew the town, I doubt these things. But I will try to do this, Spencer. I really appreciate the advice. Yeah, just hang in there, and if we're all going to have days where things don't seem as hopeful, and where we might be on different wavelengths as far as dealing with our disappointment. And I think it's okay to feel those feelings. It's okay to feel the disappointment. It's okay to feel whatever you're feeling in the moment. Don't resist that feeling. But there are ways to turn those things around too. And sometimes it's through understanding the cycle. Sometimes it's through astrological magic. Sometimes just through taking a walk and trying to find gratitude for the things that we do have rather than the things that we don't. I'm not immune to those feelings and those days, Javier. I have days where I'm just super cranky and there's noise and I just can't concentrate, and I get really frustrated with the state of the world and with selfish people. And but tomorrow's a new day, and there's always an opportunity for change. MCB says, haha, I was hesitating with Cancer Mercury. There you go. Yeah, Ani says, gentrification is a bitch, Javi. I agree. Gentrification is a difficult thing that we experience in the world. And it is very much a Cancer 3 issue, because it is creating abundance for those who have privilege and have the resources, sometimes generationally, to do these things, and take away from people that have been exploited over multiple generations, oftentimes people of color or people that have been living on the fringes of society, like the people that people in power are trying to demonize, like immigrants. So things are not always equal, and gentrification is a symptom of a much deeper problem. And I think that the solution to it, changing of laws, but also a changing of belief. And if we can reach even just one person, right, and help them to understand that maybe they've gotten to where they've gotten through privilege, maybe that they have enough that they need to share to keep the system healthy, that'll be worth it, right? If we keep talking about this and say, you know what, if you have enough, sharing with your neighbor doesn't mean that it's going to diminish you. It's actually going to help keep the system healthy so that you can continue to flourish, right? Same thing with power. Sharing power does not necessarily diminish your own power. This is the challenge that we see with white supremacy, which is so ugly, right? People fear that by sharing power with people of color, that it will diminish themselves. The exact opposite is true. Because when you try to consolidate power through oppression, you are planting the seed of your own undoing. And by sharing power, wisdom, etc., resources, you're helping to diffuse any situation that could be difficult in that regard. You're helping to create a healthy, balanced system rather than one that is exploitive. So interesting things to talk about with all of this. Cantu says, yes, he has water energy. Cancer Sun, Mercury in Cancer, Uranus in Scorpio, Scorpio 3, plenty of water. But I've got a bunch of Earth planets too. I got Moon in Taurus, Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars in Virgo. So practical, hopefully, advice. Javier says, I see I have more work to do. Oh, common Saturn, he can't give me a break. All right, friends. Javier says, like me, the immigrant with mental health on disability, single mother. I'm at the bottom of the food chain. Yeah, and here's the thing. Like, I think the beautiful thing, Javier, is I don't know, I have to think about that. I have to think about that for a second. On some level as well, though, maybe you made it out of a more difficult situation potentially, right? There's a reason that you immigrated. There's a reason that you went to where you went to. And possibly, like, there are people that are in worse situations that were left behind. And I don't know. I don't live your everyday life. And I know how difficult it can be to be in a space that is not your native space. And I know you've had, all sorts of challenges and reasons for immigrating. And this is not going to be a unique story moving forward. As we move further and further into the repercussions of climate change, we will have climate refugees from people in the southern hemisphere because of the exploitation of those places, because of the exploitation of creating debt from these northern hemisphere countries to third world countries, like in that regard. So, your situation is not necessarily unique, and we will see more of this moving forward. But I think you get to be the ambassador, right, for some of these things. You get to show that you do have value, right, just by just being who you are, right, that you are an intelligent, caring person who has value, and that has value to your community no matter where you choose to place yourself on the planet. And I think that's true for everyone. I think that we get so focused on what is mine, what is yours, who belongs here, who doesn't. We're all citizens of this beautiful planet. And I think we can bring something to wherever situation we find ourselves in. All right, let's see. Yeah, and you can vent away, Javier. I know life can be frustrating sometimes, for sure. All right, friends. So I think we've broken down the 3 decans of Jupiter, Cancer 3, Jupiter in Cancer 3, Mars and Mercury in Scorpio 3, followed by the Sun and Venus over time, and then Saturn and then Neptune coming into Pisces 3. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to give you a little bit of timing for this. Okay, so let's talk about timing. Before I do that, let's take a little stretch break. What do you say? I'm going to take a stretch. Do me a huge favor. If you're still sticking around, please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you can, and go check me out over on spencermichaud.com. Follow me on all the socials, etc. And meditate on the things that you're grateful for in life. Meditate on the things that you want to change within your systems. Meditate on what small thing you can do in your own personal life so that you can become a pillar of eternal security that no external circumstance can take away from you. It's a wild world we live in sometimes. Thinking of Cat Stevens. Ooh, baby, it's a wild world, right? And that's true. And I think everyone has their own battles that they're fighting too. I think this is something to consider, is that whether it's an internal one or an external one, we don't always completely understand what someone else is going through. And I think when we make assumptions about other people, that's when we limit the possibilities of them showing us what is truly possible in our lives and in theirs. So how do we start to come into alignment with that peaceful, calm center, that eternal space, that eternal abundance, that spiritual fire that is inexhaustible? I think it's a good thing to think about as we move forward. All right. Cat Stevens. Yep, that's right. You got it. When I'm saying Cancer 3, is this for the third decanting? So this is, yes, Cancer 3 is the third 10-degree section, also called a decan, of Cancer. So between 20 degrees of Cancer and 29 and 59 minutes, really the end of the sign. So these are specific sections of a sign that have different planetary rulers within them, different spirits. They're associated with the minor arcana of the tarot, different tarot cards. And this just gives us some more specific language to talk about a sign and a visual narrative to be able to work through that, right? Yeah. Javier says, I love you guys, group hug. I'll give you a group hug right back through the screen, friend. Okay, so let's talk about how this is going to unfold over time. And to do that, I'm going to share the screen again. So I'm going to share this chart. There it is. I'm going to, let's put it here. So let's talk first about the new moon in the air sign of Venus. The air sign, yeah, the Venus's air sign of Libra is what I meant to say. So here we have the new moon in Libra 3. And this is going to be on the 21st of October. So we've talked about this at great length in our previous live stream, so I'm not going to go over every single detail with it. But there are a few interesting features that are going to help us understand our series of Grand Water Trines. And Mercury is going to be moving into its retrograde shadow the same day of the new moon in Libra 3. So the third decan of Libra talks about how do we start to recalibrate to increase that which is lacking, decrease that which is excessive. We do see a square with Jupiter to that new moon. So to be able to share with one another, we need to understand where we might be too obsessed with increase, and we might need to start to build up some of the things that we're lacking. But with Mercury going into its retrograde shadow in the third 10-degree section of Scorpio, we need to understand that we're going to be retracing this area of the zodiac. So what the retrograde shadow means basically is that this is the place that Mercury is going to retrograde back to and turn direct. So Mercury will turn direct after its retrograde at 20 degrees of Scorpio. So a lot of the things that we might be thinking about, a lot of the ideas that we might have, a lot of the communications may have to be revisited when Mercury stations retrograde in November at about 6 degrees of Sagittarius. And it'll retrograde all the way back to 20 degrees of Scorpio. So the illusions that we may be falling under, the identification, the question of which forms are vital and which ones are not, at this new moon, we're going to see Mercury and Mars coming together. It's not going to be the final answer. There may be a revisiting of which of those forms are actually vital. Because here's the interesting part of it. The very nature of the third 10-degree section of Scorpio is illusion. We may think something is vital when it actually isn't. We may think something is bringing us vitality when it's actually spent. So keep that in mind as we move forward. We're going to have to revisit this moving forward. Okay. Eliza, nice to see you, Eliza. Says Cat Stevens is a Cancer 3 sun. Well, there you go. The synchronicities are perfect today, right? I love that. So Mercury moving into its shadow on October the 21st, right as we have the new moon in Libra 3. I remember just very briefly, that's a fairly positive new moon that is hosted by Venus in its own sign, with Venus on the fixed star diadem, which suggests potentially having to make a sacrifice for the family or for our community. So keep that in mind. But for the positive return of something, right? Go check out the previous live stream for a deep dive into that. Now, the next day, let's go to the next day here. Okay. Neptune retrogrades back into Pisces. So you can see here in my chart, Neptune right here is now, let's make it blue, back in Pisces. Oops. Now it's green. There we go. So Neptune's back in Pisces, the 22nd, the day after the new moon. The same day, the sun moves into Scorpio. So you can see here, the sun's at 29 degrees of Libra here, but it's about to move into Scorpio. So let's look at that. Let's look at how this is going to be moving forward here. Go around the wheel. We're going to reorientate ourselves a little bit. So this is on the, oh man, I guess it's the 23rd. Looks like it was the 22nd, but really early. No, again, no, it's very late. That's why it looks so strange. Okay. So let's just reorientate this back to where we had Scorpio on the ascendant here. That was, I think, helpful just to get our bearings. What do you say? So now we've got the sun in Scorpio. We've got Neptune in Pisces. And our focus with the sun is going to be shining a big spotlight on potentially what we need to let go of. And that could lead to some grief. That could lead to some difficult feelings. So at the beginning of this cycle, a big spotlight identifying that which needs to be let go of. Ritualizing that grief can be helpful. Being able to identify that which is no longer serving us, right? That needs to compost. As a gardener, you got to love the compost cycle, right? When you throw away your old food scraps, when you throw away all of the old debris from the garden cycle, and you put it in a pile and you let it ferment over the course of many months, what you get is this beautiful black gold, called compost, that feeds your garden, that makes for a much more abundant harvest through the next cycle. So this is going to be the beginning of that process. Now, the first aspect of the new moon is going to come on that same day as the moon here is hanging out with Mars. So here's the moon that's going to start activating that Mars, maybe activating an understanding of what illusions we may be falling under, of what things we're trying to keep alive, even though they need to be returned back to the earth. This is going to be a test of the equilibrium that we started to try to preserve at the new moon. I was doing some reading about Scorpio in general, talking about Scorpio sort of upsetting some of the perfectly balanced energy that we achieved during Libra season through potentially having to face a dragon or a serpent battles, right? And maybe there's something in our life that comes up that feels like maybe threatening. Maybe there's something in our life that feels that like we have to overcome a challenge, and it's going to require intensity. It's going to require research. It's going to require getting underneath the surface of something and understanding what makes it tick. Sometimes that can be our own emotions. Sometimes that can be our own belief systems. One of the greatest things I think we can do as a community is understand what is motivating our actions. Because when we understand that, we may start to understand that what is motivating our actions is not what we thought it was. It might be motivated by fear. It might be motivated by trauma rather than motivated by love. And the actions that you take out of love are very different than the ones that you take out of fear and trauma. So not to say that fear can't lead to some positive actions. Like fear is a protective element. A small amount of fear is healthy sometimes. That's a survival mechanism. But when it overcomes and overtakes your life, and that's the only thing that you're working from, it can lead to some really destructive actions out in the world. The moon's going to be out of bounds in that period from the 23rd to the 29th. So while the moon is in Scorpio there and into Sagittarius, it's going to be sort of working outside of its normal realm of possibility. It's going to be leading to extremes of emotion, maybe pushing our bodies beyond their limits. So just be very careful about falling victim to your own feelings around this period of time. Recognize that it's not necessarily indicative of how things are going to be moving forward. The feelings might be more intense. The emotions that we might feel about having to let go of something could lead to a lot of tears. There could be a lot of catharsis that comes in with that. I don't think we should be afraid of the tears. I think we should embrace them. I think that sometimes when we have an overflow of emotion, when we try to control it, that's when it starts to bang around in our body and it becomes destructive. And it can lead to all sorts of challenges, mental, physical, etc. But when we let those emotions out, when we purge them through crying, through journaling, through walking, through exercising, through, whatever it is we need to release the steam valve, then we're not holding on to them. We're not hanging on so tightly. And it's not going to be so destructive in our bodies. So something to consider there. Now that is also concurrent with that Grand Water Trine. So let's take a look here with the Mercury Grand Water Trine that is going to be perfecting over the days between the 23rd and the 25th. Okay. So here we go. We're going to go forward a day here so that you could start to see the application of Mercury to Jupiter and subsequently to Saturn and Neptune. So see Mercury here at 24 degrees of Scorpio. It's going to be making the trine, the Grand Water Trine. Let's get our beautiful triangle here again. Okay, it's making this trine here, etc. So the beginning of this Grand Water Trine process Mercury. Mercury encourages us to ask questions. It is a destabilizing planet. It is one that is exploring possibilities. So questions are really important when Mercury is doing its thing. Now, the questions that we ask when Mercury is in a water sign can be emotional ones. Okay, I feel like as a Mercury and Cancer native, and you other water Mercuries can either confirm or deny this, but oftentimes when I'm feeling a lot of emotions, getting the words from here to here, the head to the mouth, has to go in this circular circuit through the heart and back up through this area of my throat. And it's sort of this energy of like, I've got to work through all of these feelings first before I can verbalize this. And an emotion is more immediate than a rational thought. An emotion can be harder to describe than a rational thought. So some of the questions that we're asking might not be rational ones. They might be emotional ones. They might be questions that our feelings are asking us rather than our minds are asking us. So if you have feelings that come up, don't dismiss the feeling. If something doesn't feel right during the Grand Water Trine, trust that, explore that. Try to put words to it. Try to put art to it. Make a song, do a drawing, do a journal, make a craft. How can you express those things to understand what it is in your life that doesn't feel like it's going to be sustainable for the essence that it wants to animate? What is the abstract feeling that is trying to be expressed through the form that needs to be released? Oftentimes we mistake the form for the abstraction. Okay, like I told you earlier with like my cats, the love that I share with a cherished animal companion is an abstraction. It's an emotion, it's a feeling. It doesn't necessarily have to have a specific form. Yes, I do feel love for specific things and specific animals and specific forms, but that love can be transferred from one form to another. I know this. I've had many pets. I feel just as much love for Kitty Bear, who has passed on, as I do for my new animal companions, Gandalf and Radagast. That is the part of me that is eternal. That ability to love is eternal. And when the day comes, I get choked up even thinking about it, having to say goodbye to those beautiful wizard cats. We'll see. That ability to love will not disappear. I'll have to decide whether I want to commit to another animal companion. I'm almost guaranteed that I will. I don't think I'm going to be that old yet that I don't want to commit to a new animal companion. But even if I didn't decide to get another pet, that love would not disappear. It would have to find a new form. It would have to find a new vehicle and a new outlet for care, right? So that's the abstraction. That's the animating part. So these questions that come up are going to be emotional, and lean into it. Don't necessarily rush to rationalize it. Like those questions, you have to feel it in your gut. You don't want to make decisions that require an emotional intelligence from just an intellectual space, because if you do it from just an intellectual space, you're going to be eventually having to change your mind. Hence the retrograde cycle. If you only allow the rational part to make the decision, eventually you're not going to be able to sustain that decision because it wasn't made with the element that was required of it, which was your heart, your feelings. So think about that as we go through the 23rd through the 25th. And we've got a lot of comments coming in here. I'm going to check in with them here. Ani says, I'll be letting go on my house when the sun joins Mars and Mercury in Scorpio. I'll be letting go of my home as Jupiter transits the IC. I timed it close to the 27th with the moon applying to Venus opposing Jupiter. Okay. I like that. So that's going to be, you're going to be building to that, Ani, as we go through this Grand Water Trine of Mercury, but probably going to be closer to when Mars makes the trine, right? The action that we're going to be taking. So this will be a good transition for this. Ani says, astrologer, good. There you go, right? Javier says, interesting in the year of the snake, right? Yeah, shedding skin. I mean, that's a good observation, Javier. As I believe are we in the year of the snake? Like, correct me if I'm wrong here. Um, but if we are, I think we are. It's escaping me at the moment. A snake renews itself through releasing old skin that doesn't serve it anymore. If it struggled by trying to maintain that old skin, it would get stuck. It wouldn't be able to grow anymore. So this release is important for growth. Okay. Don't fall victim to moving pains, but don't hurt myself packing, Ani says. There you go. Ani says, Mercury is great for contracts too. Yeah, exactly. Exchanges, right? Okay, let's see. Ani says, can confirm, as Mercury in Pisces with a Scorpio moon, Pisces is mute too. I had a dream a couple nights ago where I couldn't speak and I was trying to say thank you, right? It's hard to get that emotion to your mouth. It's got to go through all these different emotional challenges. It's like screaming underwater, right? MCB says, with 3 personal planets in Cancer, I can agree. Nice. Javier says, this Mercury retrograde seems a little foggy to do anything but sit and meditate. Potentially. There will always be opportunities to prepare, and we can talk about that as we go along. But meditation is positive. That is an action. That is choosing to clear your mental and emotional space so that you can think clearly when the time comes to take action. Javier says, I think Stephen said it earlier, I don't want to muddy up this water anymore. Just let the sediments settle. Exactly. Right. Kitty Bear. Yeah, Kitty Bear was a special animal friend. Kitty Bear found me in a time in my life that was really difficult when I was experiencing some struggles with trying to go through some legal challenges with being a parent and having to go and secure my parental rights through the court system, and experiencing some times of being away from my daughter that weren't my choice. And Kitty Bear was a little bit like a surrogate child at that point. So her and I will always have a special relationship. But now these wizard cats are it's a different relationship, but the animating essence is still love, right? Javier says, I see what you're saying now. I've got new things in the mind brewing. Ooh, I love it. Hopefully also in the heart, right? MCB says it's about having confidence and so being able to listen to the heart. Exactly. Devin says this is how trauma can reappear as well. If we don't process our trauma and give it an identity, it will come back what is going on here? It will come back in a different form, potentially. This is how we deal with patterns in our chart. Yes, right. Yes, if we don't deal with the emotions and we make a decision just rationally, it's just going to come back again, because we didn't deal with the root cause. I think emotions, not that we can't have a depth of thought, but it feels like emotions are somewhat of almost a deeper, more intuitive space. It's the indescribable sometimes, and dealing with the ineffable, the indescribable, is really important. This is part of the work that we're doing here today, is we're trying to describe ineffable qualities, eternal qualities, through words, through symbols, and they're not perfect, right? The symbol is always just kind of a reflection of the truth that we're experiencing, and a thought, I think, is sometimes a reflection of an essence that we're trying to get through, right? Sometimes emotions can be more true to form, sometimes not. Sometimes emotions can actually be illusions. Sometimes the feelings that we have that come up, it goes both ways, in my opinion. Sometimes emotions can cloud our thinking in a way that leads us to misjudge a situation because of our trauma. So if we deal with the trauma, if we deal with the core cause, we will be able to make decisions not just based on a triggering of that particular trauma through emotions, but through rational thinking and through conscious actions. MCB says, do you think it is a good idea to do a ritual of giving back and taking back energies for harmony between souls the day before the new moon with Mercury retrograde? I'm wondering. That sounds like a great idea, honestly. I think anytime you can ritualize giving and receiving, I think is important. I think honoring the energy exchange, extremely important in Scorpio. We talk about in Scorpio too, If you want to check out more of my Scorpio thoughts, check out the Deccan webinar on Scorpio. It's in the store of my website. But I talk a lot about, and both the Austin Coppock and Susie Chang and all the Decanic authors talk a lot about circuits of exchange in the second decan of Scorpio, mutual distillation. So there is this depth of merging with one another in this sign. And sometimes it's healthy, sometimes it isn't. If we ritualize that, we ritualize those exchanges, sometimes we take it more seriously and we honor it rather than just doing it unconsciously, just doing it in rote, right? Honor the emotional exchanges between you and a partner, you and a friend, you and an animal companion. Ritualize that, and then make a conscious effort to give back rather than just ritualize receiving. But don't be afraid to receive. This is something a lot of us have challenges with, is being afraid to receive, right? Esoteric Butcher. This is Devin. Yes. Yeah, it's nice to definitely tell me who you are in the chats, because sometimes it gets a little confusing who is who with the new screen names here. Devin says it is the year of the snake. Good. Thank you for that confirmation. I thought it was, but it just hasn't been on the top of my mind lately. Ani says, who knows, Spencer, after my kitty passed, it was puppy time. Bark, bark. Those saws next door if they're too loud. Yeah, maybe. I mean, I've only had a dog once in my life, and I was a teenager, and I was in transit a lot. So I don't know if I was the best dog companion at that point. And maybe there will be a time in my life where that is important to me. I consider myself a little bit more of a cat person, but I love dogs, and I think dogs are show us a wonderful different types of exchanges, gifts, etc. I prefer. I don't really like picking up their poop. I guess that's what I'll say. If I'm being totally honest, sticking my hand in a plastic bag on a hot, steamy pile of poop is not my thing. Being able to scoop it out of a litter box with a handled implement is much more my speed. So, but to each his own. It really shows a lot of dedication and commitment when the dog owners are going out and dealing with the feces of life. Yes, kitty time. Javier says, trauma is a bitch. I agree. Speaking of dreams, Javier says, do you guys think if someone appears in a dream and hugs you, perhaps it means them passing? Maybe. I guess it depends on who it is. I don't think that that's always what it means. I think that dreams are multivalent, right? I think dreams have some continuity and symbolism, but I do think it's very much specific to the dreamer. And sometimes what one symbol means to somebody can mean something completely different to someone else. All right. MCB says, I'm grateful for your answer. Thank you, friend. Appreciate you. Thank you for hanging out today. Tell me what was your previous screen name, MCB? Are you somebody that has been in the chat before, or are you a new friend? Sometimes these new screen names are throwing me off a little bit. Okay. So back to business. So the Grand Water Trine with Mercury, okay, is happening from the 23rd to the 25th, right? Rachel says, LOL, the feces of life. I feel like my lot of spirit in Scorpio. I understand that language. Yeah, well, some of us want to hold the feces of life in our hands, and others of us would rather have a scoop with a handle. So to each his own. And all of you who are dog owners, you're wonderful, wonderful souls for being able to engage with that type of creature. There was one point earlier this year where I started bringing treats around the neighborhood to feed dogs I saw on my walks, but I could see that the owners started to become uncomfortable because they're like, who's this stranger who wants to give my dog a treat? And not every dog can have the same kind of treats. So I was just like, okay, I won't force that. But yeah, I love dogs too. Okay. Oh, you're a new friend. Oh, welcome. I appreciate you being here. Okay, so let's move forward because I think we've broken down the Mercury element of it. And the other thing to keep in mind while the Mercury Grand Water Trine is happening is that the sun will also be squaring Pluto. So in the midst of this, so I'll make this red, okay? In the midst of the Mercury Grand Water Trine, the sun is going to be making a square to Pluto. So the wonderful thing about the sky is that it's a symphony. It's not just one thing happening in isolation. It's all the instruments playing at the same time. There is harmony between Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and Neptune in the sky during this period of time. But there is discord between the Sun and Pluto. Now, those of you who have been a connoisseur of music realize that sometimes we have certain instruments that are in harmony with others and others that are creating interest through discord, right? Through things that don't necessarily match. And while at first it may sound jarring, sometimes that's what makes it memorable, right? Sometimes the thing that isn't what was expected makes it worthwhile of a re-listen. So in this case, while all of the questions are happening of what we're feeling, of what we're going through, the Sun in Scorpio 1 is going to be making a square to Pluto where there is some potential challenging power dynamics. We may be feeling some grief around feeling in exile. You know, Javier has talked a lot about being an immigrant in a different country and the feelings of feeling out of place. We might be experiencing that as a collective and having a spotlight shown on some of the more corrupt ways that we treat people in exile. We've been seeing a lot of that lately since Pluto has moved into Aquarius. We've been seeing the corruption of people fearing the exile, fearing the other, rather than treating them with the respect that they deserve. So this might be part of the underlying experience that we have during the Mercury Grand Water Trine, is the Sun-Pluto square, having to deal with maybe uneven, uncomfortable power dynamics, identifying different habits and addictions that we might have, different desires that are difficult to fulfill, and how that might make us feel othered on some level. Okay, so that moves us on, right? Yeah, a Beethoven kind of symphony, right? Yeah, there's discord within that. You have some things that are in harmony, and you have other things that are discordant, but the discordant parts of the bum, 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 right? That's what makes it memorable. You know, the intensity of it, that feels like a very Sun Pluto kind of riff, right? And then it's repeated. Bum, 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 bum. Right. I feel like Jack Black doing that, but I love Jack Black. What a talent he is. But yes, it leaves an impression, you know, the discordant parts leave an impression on us, that to the point where we can recall that after hearing it so many times, right? MCB is asking, what do you think about dreaming of someone that is like a soulmate lover, but you do not know him in real life? It was a strange feeling when I woke up. I think that time and consciousness is not exactly how we perceive it linearly. I think that there are echoes of different realities of, I think Tanya and I talk about this a lot, MCB. Like she has a lot of interest in like time travel and the nature of time and things like that. And I think that, I mean, I do myself too, being an astrologer. But I think one of the things we've been talking about recently is the idea that everything is happening all at once, all the time, and that our brains are only capable of processing certain parts of it as almost like a protection mechanism so that we don't just completely short out. And maybe that works a little bit with the dream time too, the dream time being just echoes of these other parts of reality that we aren't necessarily able to reconcile in real time. So maybe we are having a relationship with multiple soulmates and multiple timelines and things of that nature, but we might be able to only process this one particular one in real time. So yeah, I could see that. Hopefully that was a decent answer for you. All right, so let's move forward to the Mars period, the Mars Grand Water Trine. So here we're going to look at, let's go forward. This is going to be between the 28th of October and the 29th. And it is also going to be during a period of time where we're going to be building towards the first quarter moon. So here now we have Mars at 24 degrees of Scorpio, trining Jupiter at 24 Cancer, and then eventually moving to trine Saturn at 25 degrees of Pisces. Okay. We'll make our triangle again. It's less attractive of a triangle, but maybe that's the nature of Mars. So to understand the difference between these, we can do two things. We can break down the significance and the desires of the planet Mars via the language of traditional astrology. And we can try to understand what's happening with other planets in the sky that could be bringing us information. So first of all, how is Mars different from Mercury? Well, Mercury destabilizes, it deconstructs, it asks questions, it casts doubt. It sees possibilities, it goes between worlds. It is a merchant, it is about exchanges between different parties, communications, etc. Well, what is Mars's motivation? Mars, according to one of the prominent translators of Hellenistic texts, Robert Schmidt, likes to sever and to separate. Mars's motivation is to remove something, is to sever spirit from a body, is to sever spirit from the collective, moving from Pisces to Aries, right? So that we can individuate into an individual body with the union of body and spirit as Aries moves into Taurus. Mars also is an expression of anger, of defense, of aggression. It is a representation of action, of being able to take action, being able to be the protector of an intuitive natural force. I guess I would say that this is indicative of the brutalness of nature, because we have the Mars is related to the lunar sect, the team of planets related to the moon, to instinctual desire. If we desire something, like if we, let's say Venus makes us aware of a desire, Mars says, now I'm going to go get it, right? Now I'm going to go pursue that. Sometimes Mars says, I feel threatened. Now I'm going to defend myself so that I don't die, the defender of the dying life force. Its role as a malefic planet, malefic basically means it's not conducive to the quality of life, right? In our gardening metaphor, Mars at its extremes can be drought, like it's very hot, dry, etc. But it does serve a purpose. Every planet serves a purpose. Sometimes when we release something from our lives, it liberates the eternal essence to find a new form. So we ask the question to identify which forms are not bringing us joy, right? That aren't bringing us vitality. Mars then does the action of severing and separating. It says, well, we've identified that which we don't necessarily want to keep in our lives. Now it's time to take action to remove it from our lives. Now, there's another dark side of Mars that I was reading about today that I wanted to bring up too, is one of the challenges of having a really strong Mars, and Mars in Scorpio is very strong. It's in its home domicile. It's like the ninja that is doing things very efficiently, but in secret, in the dark. But Austin Coppock also talks about the fulfillment of desires. And Mars in this decan, excuse me, Mars in this decan can fulfill desires that may be unhealthy. And we may be pursuing addictions. We may be pursuing things that we want, even though they're not providing us with vitality. I've talked with a lot of people who are like trying to quit smoking, for example. And, you know, Mars could potentially, if we're utilizing it consciously, it could be helpful in severing us from that habit that could be detrimental to our health. It also, if we're utilizing it instinctually, could help us to pursue that addiction further. So there are two sides to the Mars part of this equation. It could help us to sever and separate from something that is no longer serving us, no longer bringing us vitality, or it could facilitate ease in pursuing something that is an illusion, that isn't actually healthy for us. So you have to determine what that means for you moving forward. during the 28th to the 29th. And as we are doing so, we see that the moon is going to be moving through its first quarter phase, which is kind of an echo, really. It's an echo of, let's move it forward a little bit here. I know this disorientates us a little bit, but as we move forward, you're going to see the moon moving into about 6 degrees of Aquarius right here. Let's see if we can we get it reorientated. There we go. So it's contextualized by this first quarter moon, okay? And a lot of the themes that we talked about with Pluto and the sun squaring are going to be activated and manifested by the moon. Remember, the moon is sort of like a wheel of a music box. And it has those little tines in it, those little spikes that ring the notes of these planets. So the moon is going to be ringing the note of Pluto. It's going to say, this note has always been there, and now it's time for it to be activated. We're going to hear that vibration out in the world. So think back to the Sun-Pluto square and what types of awareness that brought to you consciously within your mind, power dynamics, etc. And then what types of manifestations is that going to bring? What types of feelings does that bring up with the moon? What types of physical manifestations of that are we going to see at the first quarter moon? Okay. So interesting to see a different context with the Sun-Pluto square and then the Sun-Moon square. A different little, it's like a key change on some level. Now, that same day, Mercury is going to ingress into Sagittarius and immediately oppose Uranus. So what types of things are we going to be experiencing with Mercury and Sagittarius opposing Uranus? Well, Mercury is going to be moving out of the watery sign of Scorpio and into the fire sign of Sagittarius, and into its own decan. It has a special secret superpower there. It is in its exile. Okay, so it has a little bit of debility because Mercury loves to ask questions and to see things from multiple perspectives. Jupiter, the sign that is the ruler, or the planet that is the ruler of Sagittarius, likes to maybe have certainty about things. And when Mercury is in a sign that is attached to certainty, it maybe asks less questions and tries to communicate more beliefs, ideals, philosophies. And that doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, but if the function of the planet is to gather information, if the function of the planet is to ask questions, that can lead to some difficult outcomes because Mercury in Sagittarius might not be interested in doing those things. Now, with its opposition to Uranus, you may be firing off some belief system before you've gathered all the information. Let's say that you got Mars inspiring you to take action. You've identified a form that is no longer serving you, and you want to liberate that energy. Now, the cool thing about this is that when Mars severs and separates the form in the final decan of Scorpio, the transition to Sagittarius 1 is trying to find a new form. So we may be inspired through the letting go, through the getting rid of stuff to be like, oh, I gotta go find a new form, and I want to do it quickly. Like this decan is associated with speed. Sagittarius 1 is speed. It's the 8 of Pentacles, right? Or sorry, the 8 of Wands, excuse me. 8 of Wands. And you see 8 wands just flying through the air at great speed. But the challenge with this, and the reason I would encourage you to slow down, is twofold. First of all, Mercury is going to be making an opposition to Uranus and Gemini. You may have too many options to be able to take action on any one of them. When you liberate something from an old form, you may be able to see possibilities that you wouldn't be able to necessarily see otherwise. And if you move too quickly, you might not gain all the information that you need to make a wise choice moving forward. The other thing to be careful of with this too, the opposition to Uranus can lead to hubris. I broke down Uranus and Gemini and the hubris that comes with Uranian desire to steal fire from the gods, to be godlike. Liz Green does an excellent job in her book, The Art of Stealing Fire, talking about the dangers of Uranus trying to become divine, and the desire to take an idea that is interesting and maybe new and take a divine ideal and to manifest it, but the danger of it getting out of control because it's a universal concept rather than a temporal one, right? It's a idealistic concept rather than a practical one. So that there is a danger of firing off information, firing off a belief system, and doing it with the desire to shake things up, right? You're like, I've identified the form that needs to go, and now I need to take action, and I'm just going to fire off all these belief systems about how that form was wrong and blah, 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 blah. And that could lead to some backtracking, specifically because Mercury is going to station retrograde 5 or 6 degrees later. So you may have to take back something that you say in haste, that you do in haste, that you do because you're trying to disrupt something in your life or something disruptive is coming into your life. So my advice at this period of time is slow down, is really consider the ramifications of your actions. Don't stop asking questions, gather information. Don't think that you have all the information because you probably don't, especially with Mercury stationing retrograde. You may have thought that you completely discarded the old form, but there may be more things to root out. Okay, how many times have we gone through this as human beings, where we thought we had rooted out the source of a problem and it comes back? Like, think about like a mold in your house or something. Let's say you have black mold in your bathroom or something, heaven forbid, and you think you've eradicated it all, and then months later you see a little inkling of mold or something like that. That's frustrating. You have to go back and remediate it again. Let's say you feel like you've gotten rid of a toxic person in your life, and then they show up again months later, years later, and you have to deal with it again because they're, have reared their head once again. That's a possibility with these types of things. So recognize that the job is not completely done. Try not to make declarative statements that are based on just being rash and feeling like we're shooting ourselves too close to the sun, right? Or flying too close to the sun. And recognize that there will be a reversal of some sort. You're going to have to revisit that which you are trying to root out through this Grand Water Trine. Okay. Appreciate you. Ani says, geez, Mercury opposed Pluto. I hope my power inverter doesn't fry my devices while I'm traveling. Opposing your natal Pluto? Or Mercury and Uranus. Okay, gotcha. Yep. There you go. Ani says, 8 of Wands, excellent for traveling. Too many places not to go, not enough time. Yeah, absolutely. Ani says, this is my 8th house. It sounds expensive. Maybe. But if you know in advance, Ani, and everybody, if you know in advance what these placements might inspire, what area of your life they might be coming to you through, I think you will be more prepared to, in real time, when you're feeling the lightning bolt come through you, literally the lightning bolt of Uranus, the energy coming through you, where what you want to, it's very different than Mercury in a water sign. This is going to be like, I feel this need to blurt something out. I got to tell you the truth. Here's the truth, the capital T, truth. And you're going to feel this energy in your body like, I can't control it any longer. Well, if you know in advance that this is the energy that's going to be motivating everybody, when you start to feel that electricity coursing through your body and your capital T truth rising up through the throat into the mouth, in real time, you could say, you know what? I remember back a couple weeks ago, Spencer said, maybe I should think this through first before I fire off some tweet, I fire off some email, some communication that is telling someone how it is. Right? That's the beauty of astrology, is it prepares us for moments like that because we're all subject to the planets. We're all subject to the influence of the planets. It's a rare person. I don't think I've met anybody who's transcended planetary influence. They may claim to, but I still am skeptical. But if we know in real time, we can notice that feeling, observe the feeling, and then maybe make a choice through our pronoia, This is how we change our fate. Through our foresight, we may be able to make a better choice in the moment. We can feel that rising within us, say, aha, I remember this. I remember. There's that feeling. There's that Uranian lightning energy, that desire for me to fire off a truth, maybe before I have all the answers that could lead to complications moving forward. Javier says, I have black mold in my bathroom. Oh no, what a ride I'm on. Oh yeah. I've had to deal with some conditions like that in the past, and it is very difficult for sure. It asks to be grounded, MCB says. I like that. How can we get grounded? This might be an excellent few days. I love that. This might be an excellent few days to find grounding practices so that that energy that's coursing through you doesn't become like Emperor Palpatine coming out of your fingers and frying somebody, right? How do you stick it into the ground? How do you do something practical? How do you do something grounding in your life? How do you journal, exercise, make something, right? Rather than just lashing out. This is an aspect that I think that could be where we're lashing out because we're feeling a lot of grief at the collective, at the unfairness that we're witnessing as we continue to other people that are just trying to live their lives, right? This is I could see with the first quarter moon, sun in Scorpio, moon in Aquarius, we get really angry about something we see in the news. And honestly, there's plenty to be angry about, right? But if you start firing off things in a way, think about how things have gone. And here's real world examples of this. When we experience the trauma of witnessing someone that not everybody here agrees with being murdered on our screens, many of us fired off communications that had consequences, right? And that doesn't mean that we have to agree with someone's ideology, etc., that we have to agree with what they stood for, of what the actions that they took in their life. And we don't necessarily even have to agree with the actions that were taken as punishment for expressing those things. But if we understand that the climate that we are working within would love nothing more than to punish people for being honest about things that don't align with the centralized power. If you know that in advance, you might want to be careful about how you express yourself when the next event that requires outrage comes up. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to silence yourself, that you have to censor yourself. It's all about being cagey, right? If you notice on this channel, we don't shy away from difficult topics. I hope you've noticed that. But we're a little bit cagey about how we express them so that we can speak in the language of symbol. Sometimes we have to speak in coded ways, sometimes when the powers that be are looking for any excuse to tighten the grip of oppression. So this is another warning of maybe thinking twice before firing off a reaction to something that makes you upset. Doesn't mean you can't take action. It just means that you have to figure out the right channel for it that will lead to the right outcome. For example, when we saw Jimmy Kimmel be canceled from the airwaves, instead of people just tweeting about it and voicing their rage and frustration, the action that they took that was actually effective was one where they started canceling their Disney Plus subscriptions. So they hurt the people who are abusing power with the language that they would understand, the language of money. And there may be something similar that comes up where you have to conserve your energy and do things in a way that will actually be effective, like protesting with your dollar rather than doing some kind of performative outrage. Really important. And it worked. It got him back on the air. And there will be more circumstances like this as we see a rise in authoritarianism and a rise in challenging circumstances in the world. So how do we ground that? The grounded action in that case was canceling a subscription rather than just voicing rage in a forum, an echo chamber, or in one that could get you, I don't know, fired from your job or whatever. No one's going to fire you from your job if you cancel Disney Plus. You know what I'm saying? But it'll have the actual effect of what you would be trying to do by firing off that tweet, reversing the action. And man, it's so powerful to think in that regard, right? Javier is talking about, I also have a toxic ex. Oh my goodness, Javier, you got a lot going on. MCB says, what's the good side of this opposition? The good side, a couple things. I think that Mercury's ability in Sagittarius 1 is contagious enthusiasm. I think that if you do have a good idea that you want to share that is hopeful, I think, firing that off, I think can be really powerful. I think that there could be something where you have a moment of awareness, of a lightning awareness, where you are able to share something that you're really enthusiastic about that isn't necessarily like just a capital T truth, but something that's meaningful to you, right? The ability to be able to move quickly between circumstances is enhanced with this. Susie Chang talks about in her book 36 Secrets that she uses Mercury and of course the Eight of Wands card to move her baggage through an airport quickly. Like she attached like a talisman of a Eight of Wands card to her luggage so that it moves swiftly from one destination to the next. So if you have to move something quickly from one destination to the next, this could probably be useful for that. So I hope that's helpful. Javier says, be a Jedi, not a Sith. Solid advice. Yeah, I mean, I guess you can always choose which side of the Force you want to be working with. But it's all balance on some level. Sometimes we have to call out negative things, but we don't want to get stuck in it, right? I think that's the thing. Like, we're all going to experience the dark side of life on some level. We're all going to experience some moments of light, hopefully. And how do we balance those things out so that we are a whole person rather than, you know, a half-truth? MCB says, often as I believe our inside world is our outside world, I said, I do not consent with a reality, often a political system. Yeah, I mean, and it's even more important, MCB, with the amount of gaslighting we're experiencing from leadership that is more concerned with their own financial gratification rather than the good of their constituents. So the reality that they are putting forth may be an illusion, right? So you don't have to consent with an illusion, but you also don't have to put yourself, I guess, in unnecessary danger by taking an action that is not well considered. When you are up against a powerful force like the Empire, if we're going to use the Star Wars kind of thing, that resistance didn't march up to a Star Destroyer or to the Death Star and say, fuck you, Death Star. And say, they like drive up to it and say, fuck you, Death Star. Like you can't destroy my planet. I don't believe in you. I mean, that's just going to get the Death Star fired up and, you know, make them aware that your planet is asking to be destroyed. Okay. Right. But if you go in through a back channel, you know, you sneak in the back way, you organize, you know, maybe sometimes in secret on a secret forest planet called Endor. And then you make a very well thought out plan and you take your little X-Wing that is too small even to be noticed and you fly down the canyon and shoot your laser at the most vulnerable point, you might be able to destroy the whole thing, the whole system. Okay. But this is the beauty of Scorpio. Scorpio is not like Aries Mars, where it's just like a berserker, where it's head on. It's like face on. It's like, I'm going to go right up to you and swing my axe right in your face. That's not how it works. This is where you're like sneaking in the nighttime, like a ninja, you know, like a secret force, and like cutting off the electricity to the whole compound in secret, you know, and that's the smarter way to do that. That preserves your energy and preserves your life force. So we're talking about intelligent resistance rather than a wasting of our energy. Okay. So during that period, as this unfolds, not only is Mercury going to be opposing Uranus and moving into its exile in Sagittarius, but it's sextiling Pluto and then moving out of bounds on Halloween, right? Or the day before Halloween, the 30th and the 31st of October. So not only are we going to be inspired to fire off, to go up to the Death Star and give the middle finger to it, but we may be acting way out of character doing so, right? Mercury out of bounds is not communicating in the way that we would normally find quote unquote socially acceptable. So again, that we might find that we are acting out of character, communicating out of character, or inspired to do so. We may also have ideas that are outside the box, though. This is the positive part of Mercury out of bounds, is we might be thinking outside the box and have ideas that we never would have had otherwise. And we feel like we want to take action on them right away, but be careful, though, because as we move into November, Mercury is going to station retrograde in Sagittarius 1. Jupiter is going to station retrograde in Cancer 3. Saturn's going to station direct in Pisces 3. And then at the end of the month, Mercury is going to station direct again at that 20-degree mark that I told you about in Scorpio 3. So a lot of planets switching directions, a lot of delays potentially. So this brings us to the full moon here. We've only got a few more things to go. We've got this full moon at the November 5th. And this is in Taurus 2, second decan of Taurus. And this really asks us to balance out our desire to merge with others, with the sun in the second 10-degree section of Scorpio, our independence, like our ability to work under our own power, moon in Taurus, but also giving and receiving. The gift of the moon in Taurus 3, and this is, I have the moon in this decan, so this is where my midheaven is, 13 degrees Taurus. So you'll see in real time how having a full moon right on one of your angles might play out. But this is a place where we're trying to find the right pattern, the right distribution of our energy over time, our patience, our ability to be open to receiving blessings, and our ability to be generous with one another, our ability to show up and do the work that needs to be done, but then resting when we need to rest. Like our seasonal intelligence. So I think this is a good one for practicing patience and slowing down. Now, as we unfold from this full moon, we're going to see Venus moving into Scorpio. Okay, so here's Venus joining the party on November the 6th into the 7th here. And also, Uranus is going to be moving into Taurus. So between the 6th and the 7th, Venus moves into Scorpio and Uranus retrogrades back into Taurus 3. Now, this is really fascinating for our series of Grand Water Trines, because what's going on here is that Uranus is going to be muddying up the waters a little bit in the earth sign. It's going to be shaking up that earthy energy and causing us to reevaluate the way that we deal with things that are out of our control, potentially through our relationship to the natural world. One of the biggest themes that came when Uranus was moving through Taurus 3 was, how do we deal with climate change? How do we deal with these natural disasters? How do we deal with embracing humility in the face of nature? And I think we're going to have to deal with that again. Uranus moving into Gemini brought up a lot of questions about how we communicate, really a lot of focus on AI and artificial intelligence. But Uranus moving back into Taurus 3 says, you may have to go back and repair something. You may have to deal with a natural force that is bigger than you, right? All of us as human beings are not necessarily bigger than the natural world. We may come under the delusion that we can control the natural world. But Uranus in Taurus 3 says, wait a minute. You are still subjected to this greater force, which is Gaia. And this is a point where we're going to be really having to reconcile with that a little bit, especially as the sun moves into an opposition and Venus moves into an opposition with Uranus and Taurus. Now, Mercury is also going to retrograde back into that. So interesting times here. So here we have the sun's Grand Water Trine as we move forward into November. So I'm going to skip ahead to November the 17th. So the 17th through the 21st or so, first of all. And what I didn't mention there is that before that happens, Jupiter stations retrograde on about November the 12th or November the 11th. Okay, I didn't have this listed here, but I only had so much space. So Jupiter is going to station retrograde around 11:11. And so we were reevaluating how we deal with our excesses, how we deal with scarcity versus surplus, how we deal with philanthropy, how we deal with creating situations where we can create abundance without having it be at the expense of someone else. And through that awareness, okay, now we see the sun around the 17th starting to make a trine to Jupiter. Now the sun is casting this big spotlight on this Grand Water Trine. We've already gone through Mercury. We've already gone through Mars. Now we've got the sun making this trine here with Jupiter and with Saturn and Neptune. Now, what is the sun's impetus? What does the sun want to experience? Well, the sun is a planet that selects. The sun is a planet that shines the light of awareness. The sun is a planet associated with authority. So we may be trying to bring awareness and a spotlight to the forms that we need to let go of. We may be experiencing the need to let go of a position of authority or something of that nature, or authority figures that have passed their prime, I guess you could say. I don't like predicting death or anything like that, but I could definitely see some kind of leader that is old passing away or something like that. I don't know if it's the leader, but maybe a political figure or something like that while the sun's moving through this decan. And that's natural. Everybody is going through changes, and sometimes we see prominent figures. It doesn't have to be a political figure. It could be like someone who's in the spotlight through the entertainment industry or something like that. But this happens every year. Like, don't mistake that, like, oh, well, because it's Grand Water Trine, somebody's going to die. People die every day, okay? And people go through this sun through the third decan of Scorpio every year. So that is not unique. But the ability to spotlight that form that needs to be let go of is supported here. The other thing that we didn't really mention that we should have is that Mercury stations retrograde. Let's go back a few days. At about 6 degrees on the 9th. I don't know how I missed that. Well, anyway, so Mercury stations retrograde on the 9th of November, and it is moving backwards through the first decan of Sagittarius. So all the things that we did through speed are going to be reevaluated. So this Grand Water Trine of the sun is highlighted not only by Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius 1, but also an opposition between the sun and Uranus and Mercury and Uranus, because Mercury is going to move into Scorpio 3 on the 18th. So we could see here, we're seeing this building of like the opposition between the sun and Uranus, and then Mercury moving into Scorpio 3 right here and immediately opposing Uranus on the 18th and 19th. So there could be some unexpected events like in multiple areas of our life. Like you'll want to look to the Scorpio area of your life, the Taurus area of your life, but also the planets ruling houses. So in the sun's case, Leo. So you might have something in the Leo area of your chart that has a Uranian flavor, and also the Mercury areas of your chart, Gemini and Virgo, because Mercury is the host of those two topics as well. And here's our second Mercury retrograde, our second Mercury Grand Water Trine in the retrograde cycle. So how is this different from the original one? Well, a couple things. Let's go back for a second. We had Mercury direct, Jupiter direct, Saturn retrograde, and Neptune retrograde during the 23rd and the 25th of October. When we get to the retrograde one, we have Mercury retrograde, Jupiter retrograde, Saturn and Neptune are still retrograde. So all of these planets within the trine, okay, are going to be retrograde. Now, the sun doesn't retrograde, so that's not going to be a part of it. But interesting that this one is about reviewing. So we're going to initiate the energy at the end of October and then review it in the last few weeks of November. So whatever you're experiencing at the end of this month with the first Grand Water Trines, you're going to be going over it again, especially with the Mercurial one. And as we move forward here, Mercury opposes Uranus, as I was talking about, on the 19th of November. So some kind of maybe shocking communication. It's echoing the Mercury-Uranus opposition from Sagittarius to Gemini, but from different signs. So this may be something, shocking with weather. This could be something where we're having to repair something that we didn't expect. Uranus in the third decan of Taurus shows us that, hey, maybe there's something that's broken that we did too quickly. If we did something too fast with the Mercury opposition to Uranus from Sagittarius to Gemini, we may have to repair something, right? This could be that experience here. And that's building to a Mercury Cazimi. So this is building to the Mercury in the heart of the sun, okay, at 28 degrees or so of Scorpio, okay? A really important new rebirth for Mercury. So with all these shocks, we're going to be rebirthing something, but through maybe a completely new awareness, okay? Let me check in with the chat here. MCB says, sounds like a bat. Yes, Scorpio at work, right? Javier says, I'm going to be laughing all day now at fuck you, Death Star. you can have that one. Right? Says this is going to be a crazy ride the next few months. Potentially. Maybe externally. But the only thing you have control of, really, is that internal experience of it. So maybe there will be chaos externally, but how do you maintain your inner peace and your inner centeredness, right? MCB says it will be difficult patience with Mercury and Mars and Sagittarius. I agree. Sometimes the planetary influences will make doing the quote unquote right thing more difficult, right? Right now, with Venus in Libra, Jupiter in Cancer, creating harmony might be a little bit easier than when Venus is in its exile in Scorpio or Mercury is in its exile in Sagittarius. Communicating might be easier when it's not in its exile. So that's just life, right? But different times have different things that are supported. And the sooner we come to terms with the fact that not every time is going to be perfect, the less we're going to be resisting life and just accepting what comes and doing the work that we need to do in those times. Sometimes we have to do the hard work of those times. Sometimes we have to do the difficult, challenging communications that we don't want to do, or the hard, dirty, disgusting work of cleaning out a sewer system or something like that. Like all of those things have their time and their place. And with astrology, the beauty of it is not being taken completely by surprise. Now, I will say that Uranus still surprises me to this day, even though I know shit's coming. I'm like, oh, that's a new manifestation of that. But I know to create space in my head, in my heart, in my schedule to deal with unexpected things. I create margin in my life so that it doesn't completely destroy everything that I'm planning on doing. And if you know that there's like a bunch of Uranus oppositions, clear your schedule, like allow space for life to happen. Javier says, I should just sleep until next year. I mean, maybe. I don't know. On the contrary, MCB says, it's time to stay awake. I think that both are true. Get enough rest, but don't fall asleep to the point that life is happening without your knowledge, and then life happens to you rather than you having some awareness of what's going on and some agency within it. Javier says, this is me drowning in the trines. Oh, boy. Maybe some tape over the mouth for me, Javier says. Potentially. Javier you got a bunch of Gemini stuff, right? So, we'll forgive it on some level. Hey, Kate's here. What's up, Kate? Nice to see you. Up. No sleeping. Yeah, I think I would tend to agree with Kate on this. I think that The way that fascism takes over is through people falling asleep and choosing to stay asleep while their vulnerable neighbors, brothers and sisters, uh, are taken off to detention centers and abused. So I agree with Kate. This isn't a time for sleeping. This is a time for planning. This is a time for organizing. This is a time for resisting and through um, counteracting hate through big love, through big kindness, through humor, okay? Through getting to know your neighbors, through preparing, through just becoming aware of what's happening and voting with your dollar, through organizing. Like this weekend, there's a huge organization happening. The No Kings rally is happening this weekend. That's a big, I think it's more of in alignment with the fuck you Death Star. I think that's kind of the energy of that. But there's also, like, in my local community, there's a block party that's being organized for neighbors to start to discuss with one another. How do we organize? How do we support each other through these challenging times? And to me, that's a really effective way to counteract some of the forces that would seek to isolate us from one another, right? So you can't do that if you're asleep, right? You have to be aware of these things without feeling overwhelmed with it. Yeah. Yeah, Kate says, wake the F up. Yeah. And here's the thing. We're all going to be playing different roles. Some of us are going to be, hitting the canteen of coffee and jitterily awake the whole time. And some of us are going to need to rest a little bit. Like, you never know when you're going to be called upon. So I do think being well rested so that when your moment comes that you can respond is important. I don't think that we need to just like have a 24-hour awareness of everything all the time. This has actually been something that's been extremely helpful for my own mental health lately. Is I have times where I'm disconnected from the internet, from my phone, from the news, where I'm reading and where I'm meditating, where I'm journaling, where I'm creating, where I'm talking to real people in real life, in real time. And those things feed my ability to be present when I have to deal with some of the other challenges of my of the news cycle, of the challenges in my community. Helps me to become informed, not only from a place of fear, but from a place of vision of what I want to happen in the world. So it is both. Ani says, my moon Uranus in the last decan of Scorpio opposed Uranus with Mercury in this transit equals insomnia. I really like I'm not a medical doctor, so don't take this as medical advice, but I really enjoy lavender essential oil. I put some on my wrists and I put it on my neck. If I'm having trouble sleeping, it generally puts me out. So try that if you can tolerate it. How can you sleep when Uranus is shaking the proverbial earth? Hopefully it's just a metaphor. Exactly. MCB says, so many people around me were so tired lately. Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's exhausting having to deal with fear all the time. So take a break from it so that your nervous system can repair itself. This is the first time in history, I think, that we've had to just constantly be inundated with all the crises of the earth all at once. And we never get a break from it because we're so addicted to these devices. That's not how it's been for almost the entirety of human history. So realize that and take a break every once in a while. There will be time to engage, but there is also time to rest. Javier says, I've been doing lots of this reaching out for help lately, lots of intakes, wait lists, but it's all paying off slowly. The Saturn grind. There you go. Ani says, I keep lavender roll in my purse. Mercury approved. There you go. Perfect. Okay. So that Mercury cazimi at 28 degrees of Scorpio on the 20th is coming concurrently with a new moon in Scorpio. So this is a new moon in Scorpio that's happening right as Mercury's cazimi. Okay, so here it is here. I know I switched it around, but now you can see Scorpio down here. And here is Mercury cazimi at the new moon. Powerful new moon for awareness about what illusions we're living under and what forms need to be returned to the earth. How do we let go of things? Mercury is opposing Uranus, so this could come in a shocking but maybe potentially enlightening way. Venus is moving through Scorpio at this point. Mars is into Sagittarius, so we might be taking action, trying to find new forms to merge body and spirit to be able to accomplish a goal in our lives. So this is all setting up the last aspect that we have here. And thank you so much for sticking with me here today. I know we've been going over a lot of information, but to me, this is all a narrative. What we're doing is we're constructing a narrative around how these planets are going to unfold and showing you the differences between the different Grand Water Trines. So this is all going to be helping to set up the last of our Grand Water Trines, okay, for the time being, which is the Venus one. And this is going to be on the 24th of November all the way till the 30th or so. So this is where we start to see Venus beginning to make its trine with Jupiter. So if we go forward here, and in America, this is Thanksgiving week, right? So think about the context if you have like family that you go visit of what you might be experiencing here. And all of the things that get brought up at the Thanksgiving dinner table, if you're fortunate enough to have friends and family to engage with. But Venus is in its exile in Scorpio. It is a planet that generally wants to allow good fortune to come to her, that likes to unify things, likes to harmonize, whereas Mars is a planet that severs and separates. Mars is a planet that generally will try to pursue its desires rather than let things come to it. Now, the little interesting part about this is that Venus has a sort of special power in the third decan of Scorpio. That is the Chaldean ruler of Scorpio 3. And its power is to glamorize some of those old forms that are not necessarily bringing us vitality. Susie Chang talks about fairy gold, and I guess I'm not completely sure what the fairy gold entails. I'd have to engage with that material a little bit more. But I do think that sometimes we can take joy or pleasure in the composting process. Potentially, I think what Venus can do is show us the beauty of decay, right? The beauty of letting go. There's been various times on my walks in the woods where I've come across a decaying animal of some sort. I believe there was one that was really powerful. It was a fox that we saw. Like it was in an area where I'd seen other foxes before, and the fox was a messenger at a really powerful time in my life where I was tasked with being a family protector. And I think I came across that same animal many, many months or years later that was in the process of decay. And that was kind of bringing it full circle. And there was some beauty to that, even though that's like it's putrid and, you know, there's bones and melting hair and fur and stuff, but there is something beautiful about seeing it return to the earth in that process. I think that's what this could be bringing us, is the beauty of decay, the beauty of letting go, the beauty inherent in not holding on to a form that is no longer serving vitality, because we know that it's a liberating force. Again, I can't stress enough that Scorpio is not just about the pain of releasing something. It's about the relief that you feel after you've released something. Think about how much better you feel when you've gotten rid of a burden that's been weighing you down. Think about how much better you feel when you get rid of a sink full of dirty dishes and you can finally like run the water again. Think about when you can move through your house after you've gotten rid of the clutter that had been making it impossible to move around or something like that. It feels good, and it frees up good energy, good feng shui. And I think that this could be the benefit, where we're experiencing the benefits of that letting go process. I think this is going to be a positive time, I hope. You know, as long as we go through the acceptance that we can't keep something alive that we need to release. You can make it a difficult time if you're hanging on to something that isn't going to work anymore. But if you're coming into alignment with the Tao, the divine plan, with the current of your life, letting go of the oars and let it pull you where it wants to go, it can be a joyful experience, and you can see some beautiful scenery along the way. Okay, friends, I'm checking in with the chat one more time, and then I have an I-Ching and an animal for you. the animal, you'll love the animal. It's great. I'm just always amazed at the synchronicity with all this. But I'm checking in any comments here. Let's see. Javier says, my sea goat mermaid tail better kick in. Right. Like referring to a Capricorn rising potentially. I think that you're tough. You're tough, Javier. You've survived this, and you'll survive the next cycles, I hope, friend. Ani says, Venus, Jupiter, third decan trine seems a good time for gluttony. Yeah, be careful of eating too much, right? It's an illusion. I always have to be careful of this at Thanksgiving. I am so very blessed to live with an excellent chef. Tanya, my partner, is an excellent chef. And I think Thanksgiving is one of my favorite eating holidays. Say what you will about the history of it and the challenging history and the illusion of some of its roots. I think that I choose to think of it as a Jupiterian holiday of the abundance of Zeus and of sharing with one another and sharing a good meal, sharing the harvest. And Tanya just does a great job with it. One of the things we do fairly often is sometimes we'll do a turkey, but oftentimes what we'll do is smoke a duck. And if you've never had a duck before, oh my goodness, so fatty and rich and delicious. I'm just getting excited just thinking about it. So smoked duck on Thanksgiving. Try it. You can't go wrong. Okay. Javier says, my crabby side doesn't like savage waves. We'll get you through it, friend. MCB says, so beautiful. Thank you. This fox story. I agree so much with this liberating force with Cancer 8th house detachment lesson. Absolutely. They're not easy lessons. Detachment is a hard thing to do. Our natural instincts are to gather resources, to preserve life force. The releasing part is something we have to grow into. But again, I do think that we learn over time that it's an equal part of a balanced life, an equal part of a healthy life. Okay. Rachel, love duck. Oh yeah, it's so delicious. Oh, man, it's so good. Ani says, Thanksgiving is literally Jove's day. That's two coincidences. Duck is yummy. Again, that is not a coincidence, right? Absolutely. I love it. I love celebrating Zeus on those days. So do a prayer to Zeus. We can recreate some of these holidays in alignment with the astrological wheel, rather than with history that may or may not have happened the way that we've been told in our propaganda classes. Right? MCB says, advice for a Saturn return during these times. Saturn in Aries here. I think that it depends on where it is in your chart, what house, what contacts it's making. But I do think this is an opportunity for you to clear the decks before you, maybe to release any old habits, any old dreams, and to come into alignment with faith in the universe to provide. Because with Saturn in Aries, there may be some circumstances that you come across that will put you in a position to be having to rely on your own resources. It's maybe feeling some isolation, but some responsibility to strike out on your own. And you're going to be better served if you do so from a place of groundedness, of understanding what is possible and what isn't, and from a place of generosity and love and faith in the ability of life to provide, even if you have to let go of some things in your life. And that will make your Saturn return in Aries so much more flowing. I probably will save you from a lot of angst and a lot of challenge. It's always helpful to be realistic about what we can do in life and to come from a great place of generosity and peace, because Saturn and Aries conjoining Neptune eventually shows us an illusion that we have to do everything by ourselves and that we have to only move under our own power, that only the strong survive and only the richest and the most powerful are going to have any value in the world or survive whatever's coming. That was part of what that Douglas Rushkoff podcast was all about, Team Human. Take a look at that. The the one about collapse, intentional collapse. That's the illusion that these technocrats have, is that they need to hoard resources, that they need to hoard all of these things so that they can upload their consciousness into the cloud and have a private island and hoard resources while everybody just fights for scraps, and that's an illusion. That's not a healthy way of engaging in the world. So if we release some of those illusions during this Grand Water Trine and realize that great love and sharing and responsibility towards one another is a better dream, right? Rather than one of just like Darwinism, that I think that we will be better served moving forward. Ani says, I want to play Mario Brothers Duck Hunt now. Scorpio's nostalgia. Well, just be careful not to hold the digital gun right up to the screen. That's cheating. Okay. Javier says, my Saturn return was brutal. Goodness. Yeah. Hugs, sending some strength, she says. Pluto and Capricorn was also rough. That's probably why I'm so tired. Take a rest, Javier. Rest your brain. That's good self-care, right? And try to see some of the light in the world. Try to see some of the good. Try to see some of the beautiful light in your daughter's eyes and the smile that she brings to you. Try to see some of the beautiful things that Ontario has to offer in the fall season, the colors around you, the crisp fall air. Breathe in deeply. Think about the support of a wonderful community that you've joined with our Decan Walkers, and how they're rooting for you, no matter if you're on the top of the wheel of fortune or on the bottom. Think about maybe the relative safety that you may live in the place that you live versus the one that you left. And yeah, there are so many things to be grateful for in this planet. And it doesn't mean that we ignore the challenging things, but we have to have a balanced way of thinking about things and try to live in gratitude if we can. Okay, friends. Yes, gratitude. Absolutely. MCB says, thanks a lot for your answers. And that's really precious and resonates well. Oh, I'm glad to hear that, friend. Appreciate your presence here today. So, friends, I have a few more symbols for you to meditate on. The first is a hexagram. And this hexagram, I asked, what is the essence of the Grand Water Trines in 2025? And I got number 61, which translates to inner truth, inner sincerity, inner faithfulness, confidence, trustworthiness, conformity between what is on the outside and what is on the inside. Okay, that's really important. Integrity, I think, is what we're going through here. Jack Balkin says, the Book of Changes regards truth as one of the most powerful forces in the universe. If you want to influence other people, there is no better way than through the truth that lies within you. Possessing inner truth means that you are sincere. You are on the inside what you appear to be on the outside. You are honest and genuine, both in your words and your deeds. You say what you mean, and you mean what you say. Such a person naturally inspires trust and confidence in others. Even the most difficult and contentious people will respond to someone whom they recognize is sincere and above board. The most powerful advocates are those who genuinely believe in the rightness of their cause. Many speakers try to win influence by manipulating or flattering others. They may confuse or even impress momentarily, but their audience does not really trust them. On the other hand, when people are completely sincere, their character shines through to others with the most powerful effect. Indeed, the text says that even pigs and fishes respond to the power of inner truth. To influence others, you must approach them in the proper manner. If you want them to be receptive to you, then you must also be receptive to them. Remember, all these water signs are feminine signs. They are receptive. So this is great advice for the receptivity of these planets and as they move through this arrangement. Listen to what other people have to say. Try to see things from their point of view. Open your heart and your mind and assume that you have as much to learn from them as they have to learn from you. When you do this, you will be able to see the truth in their way of thinking, and they in turn will be able to see the truth in yours. Once you understand what is important to them, you will be able to express yourself in the right way. Okay, so we have to find conformity from our inner and outer realities. We have to go and explore the emotions that were coming up throughout this experience. And there's two changing lines. There's one in the third place here, It says, he finds a rival. Now he beats the drum, and now he stops. Now he sobs, and now he sings. I like this because we talked a lot about the catharsis of tears. And I think that there is some truth within this line. It says, if you rely on other people to make you happy or to give you a sense of strength and self-confidence, you become dependent on their opinion of you, and your happiness will turn on whatever their moods and sentiments tend to be at any time. As a result, you may feel on top of the world one day and in the depths of despair the next. It is perfectly appropriate for people to feel happy or sad depending on the opinions and support of those they love and admire. But a healthy attitude towards life requires that you develop your own sense of self-worth. If you know who you are and are able to be true to yourself, your relation to others will have a sounder and more solid basis. You cannot have a truly rewarding relationship with others unless you have a stable sense of self to draw upon. The same principles apply to your life the same principles apply if your life is given meaning only through your comparative status with competitors and rivals. Your life will be taken over by this struggle. Their victories become your defeats, and your emotional state becomes pegged to the rise and fall of their fortunes. This is not autonomy. Indeed, it is a form of servitude. If you have no emotional center within yourself, you cannot maintain your balance in life. The text offers no statement of good fortune or bad, for a person who has surrendered control of his life to others cannot be guided. So maintain your own center, your own emotional center, not just your own intellectual center. Maintain your own ability to embrace your own value, not in comparison to someone else, but just in allowing yourself to be. That will lead us to the changing line in the fifth place. Possessing sincerity that binds like a tether, no blame. Jack Balkin says, sincerity that binds like a tether is a metaphor for true leadership. A great leader binds people together through the strength of his convictions and the force of his personality. The power of inner truth is contagious. A person with supreme confidence inspires confidence in others, giving them hope, a coherent vision of the future, and faith in their ultimate success. In this way, inner truth emanates outward, bringing people together in pursuit of great and noble causes. In this way, the power of truth transforms the world. If you are fully convicted in the rightness of your principles and the justness of your cause, you will attract others to you. Your sincerity and devotion will motivate other people, and together you can make real changes that will improve the situation. The results will be fortunate for everyone concerned. Okay, inner conviction can change the world, right? This is changing to the hexagram 26, great accumulation. It also translates to great amassing, but also great restraint, great caretaking, storing up, preparation, gathering knowledge, cultivating your abilities, improving yourself, and waiting for the right moment. Okay. So this helps us to understand, this hexagram tells us that Rome wasn't built in a day, that sometimes the right moment is preparing, that we're preparing for the right moment rather than taking action. Now, one thing that we didn't really discuss as much was Scorpio 3, which I think is the fulcrum of this Grand Water Trine. The planets are moving through this decan and making contact with Jupiter in Cancer 3, making contact with Saturn in Pisces 3 and Neptune in Pisces 3. That fulcrum has a spirit in it called Kairos. That is the opportune moment. So there may be the right moment that you're building to. There may be a moment that is past. Oftentimes we mourn a moment that is past. But I think that the I-Ching is teaching us that don't mourn that moment indefinitely. Mourn it, ritualize it, release it, and then start preparing for the next moment. Okay? Even if you can't take action, you can prepare for that moment. Even if you see in the news cycle great atrocities that you feel helpless against, you can prepare for your moment. You can prepare by organizing with your neighbors. You can prepare by creating goodwill between you, your brother, your neighbor, your family. You can prepare by educating yourself about systems of organizing society that are balanced, that are fair, that are equitable. You can prepare through centering yourself. You can prepare through releasing resentment. You can prepare by releasing helplessness and the feeling of helplessness, by appreciating who you are in this moment, by allowing yourself to be. Because remember, the world is a better place with you in it. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Don't let a fascist dictator tell you otherwise. Don't let a misguided senator, congressperson, don't let somebody who lives their life based on fear and hatred tell you what your value is. No, that's got to come from inside of you. It's got to come from just you knowing that just by existing, you have value, right? And this is bringing us to a beautiful animal for this Grand Water Trine. It's the clam. Look at this beautiful giant sea clam. My goodness. I love how synchronous the selections of these happen. I always pick these animals random. I have this book, Animal Frequency. This is my divine guide. I just go and I just like, okay, there's the animal, right? And in this case, I picked the clam. So I'm going to read from Melissa Alvarez's clam. It says, clam symbolizes that it's imperative that you keep quiet at this time. Clam is known for quickly closing its shell when it feels threatened. It is assigned to retreat, to stay quiet and wait to see what is going to happen. Good advice for that Mercury opposition from Sagittarius to Uranus. Clam protects its delicate body within a hard, impenetrable shell. You too have this same type of shell at your disposal anytime you need to quickly protect yourself. Clam means to be quiet until you are able to judge exactly what's going on. If you are unsure of a situation, let it happen as it will. Sometimes it's better not to get involved, especially if you don't have something constructive to add or if your involvement will be misconstrued by others. Clam lets you know that silence is golden at this time. Don't let others know what you're up to, and be careful. If you've got the next great idea, don't share it. Instead, protect it. That said, don't go overboard either. Clam means that you're an amazing person with incredible talents, but you don't let the world see your true self. You're much more comfortable hiding your talents and abilities within your shell so others don't make fun of you or steal your phenomenal ideas. Clam means that sometimes you have to open up in order to shine. It's difficult for you to trust, but when you do, it's done wholeheartedly. Clam helps you when you're in a situation where you don't know what to do. If you're feeling out of sorts, it can help you get back into the rhythm of your life through mind, body, and spirit. Clam can help you build inner strength and tap into strong emotions. Even though it retreats into its shell when it's threatened, Clam can help you become more outgoing. You have a lot of plans and positive intentions about the things you want to accomplish, but sometimes you may not follow through. Clam can motivate and inspire you to let go of some of your secrets and enjoy the company of others. Clam teaches you when it's better to be more closed off from others and when you should open yourself up more. It's a matter of personal empowerment and balance, which Clam has perfected. I love that. So the balance of knowing how to protect ourselves when we're in danger and when to open up when we need to ask for help, when we need to connect with others. I mean, I was looking through a number of pictures of these beautiful giant sea clams. And man, they're just like, the outside looks rocky and like, nondescript, but the inside is this matrix of beautiful colors and like otherworldliness. So we can protect this uniqueness within ourselves through maybe some, fortifying our defenses. Maybe we don't need to be as, the beauty is not necessarily on the outer shell. It's in the inner space. Maybe we can appear nondescript during times of danger, but that doesn't mean that our inner beauty is repressed, that it's cultivated. And sometimes we open it up when it feels safe to do so, and sometimes we have to close it off from people who would seek to steal energy, like energy vampires, or people that would seek to destabilize our sense of safety and security. So an excellent animal guide for this set of Grand Water Trines. All right, my friends, that is what I've got for you today. I'm just going to do one more tour through the chat here today. We've got some beautiful comments. Thank you so much for all your contributions in the chat today. Beautiful hexagram, Javier says. MCB says, the point of inner truth is so elegant as is delicate between great faith and wise humility. Yeah, beautiful. Haha, clam guy, right? He's solid. There you go. I think it's a wonderful connection between the inner truth and inner sincerity and the inner beauty of the clam. It's really very synchronous. Okay. Javier says, I like ride and feel the waves. Got lots of vibes, this clam. All right, my friends. Okay. Be the clam, Ani says. If you don't use it, you lose it, right? Yeah, but no, I think it's what the clam is not saying to repress yourself indefinitely. The clam is saying know the right timing to open up, know the right spaces where it's safe to do so, and know when it's appropriate to protect yourself and to protect your ideas and protect your sensitivity. And you're going to have to trust your intuition as to what that means for you. It's going to mean different things for different people in different spaces. So it is not about oppression. It's about right timing and the kairos moment. And this is something that Scorpio teaches us, is there is a right time, sometimes to be very visible. There's sometimes to do things behind the scenes. And knowing the appropriate time to do so is the gift of wisdom and the gift of experience. All right, my friends, that's what I've got for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Go follow me over at my social medias at Spencer Michaud on Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, etc. Go check me out on spencermichaud.com. Reach out if you need a reading. Visit the store if you want to learn more about all of the things that I've talked about today. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video, the easiest thing to do. Turn on the notification bell so you know when we're going live. And I would love to see you again in the chat. Thank you so much for participating today. Love all of you. Have a great weekend, etc. Have a great series of water trines. Feel your feelings, get centered, and we'll get through it together. Ride the wave, so to speak. All right, friends. Have a good one. We'll see you the next time. And be kind to yourself, right? Try to be the true you and protect that beautiful inner beauty and share it with people that appreciate it, right? Don't cast your pearls before swine. If we bring that kind of energy, right, when it talks about pigs and fishes, right? If someone's not going to appreciate you, don't waste your energy on it. Find the people that are, the folks that will appreciate you, and try to bring that kindness and appreciate others so you can bring that energy into the world. All right, my friends, have a good one. We'll see you the next time. Peace.